Hey folks, this is Tolly and welcome to some game dev here again with Drixie.
Hello.
Drixie's going to be doing some drawing in the background, working on some menu art. And today my plan is mostly to take a real hard look at our menu system. In previous streams I've kind of touched on it, but I haven't done a lot of the menu stuff on camera and I haven't really explained a lot of how my menu system works. There's some problems with it that I kind of want to tweak and change, and so going to be focusing on kind of like breaking down everything for myself as well as for those of you watching, but also kind of just like trying to figure out where the problems are with it. So switch over to my view. So when we open up the menu, we have kind of the classic JRPG. We have skills, items, and equipments. The other bottom three are kind of placeholder and aren't accessible at this time. And we can kind of get into like a party menu where we can go into Better Sword. We can click on Better Sword to equip it, and now Better Sword is equipped. There's a bunch of problems with some of this setup which I want to solve later, but at a fundamental level, the way that we're like moving the screens and stuff, I feel is a little jittery at times, and I kind of want to just try reworking the whole thing. Right now we move all of the menu elements, whereas I think I want to try and instead move the camera. So have everything kind of just laid out and have the camera move left and right instead of moving the entire menu system left and right. So that's kind of like one of the things I want to work on today, is kind of rebuilding the transition system. The other thing is just in general, the way that we have stuff architected, I kind of want to just break that down even for myself in kind of like a component state machine system, and try and figure out like how is everything connected, how are all our screens connected, how are all the pieces connected, and how can I make it a little bit more clean and better. That's pretty much it. And that's basically where we're going to get started. So let's dive into, maybe let's start with a broad overview. Owl I Can't has contributed 402 points towards the Minecraft stream.
Lurking.
Which is pretty cool.
Well done.
We're getting close now. The Minecraft stream might be tomorrow, depending on how many people pop in to drop off points.
That is very exciting.
So let's kind of run through the screens in a little bit.
Ooh, I'm going to put this on a new layer before I get too ahead of myself.
Let's UI, screens, front end, screens, and components. Okay, so the way that the system is kind of broke down is that essentially I have screens, which are classes that manage all of the components that make up that screen. And whether these screens are on or enabled or showing is kind of controlled from like a screen controller. So if we go into our global scene, which has a lot of our global managers in it, we have a screen controller as well as a screen transition controller. And this screen controller, essentially on initial load or anytime we're hanging out and doing stuff in the game, is essentially has a list of all the screens we have, and we can kind of call open on any screen. And we call open on a screen, we're essentially just telling that screen to open, and we're telling the previous screen, if it existed, to close. And at its core, it keeps track of which screens are on a stack. So if you can think of like a deck of playing cards, if we have like an empty space with nothing, we start by putting the main menu on the stack as like the first menu. And then from the main menu, we can enter into one of the other screens, like items or skills, and the screen manager keeps track of that. There's currently a bug where if I hit some buttons too quickly, things aren't loaded fully, so give it a half a second. My screen stack is empty. Oh, I'm loading from the global scene. I need to go back to the front end scene. So if I open this up and we open into the main menu, right now the main menu is on the stack. And then if we go into the equipment screen is now added on top of the main menu. And if we go in another level, this is technically anytime we change transition or change selections is a new screen in my game. So we've changed selection, so now we've put the gear selection screen on the stack, even though visually they look like they're basically the same as the kind of base party selection. And then when we select here, we put a third screen on the stack, which is the selecting a better item to equip, essentially. And so if you pop off each of those in order, then you eventually get to a point where you're back to the main menu, which is on the bottom. And so the screen controller is essentially managing that stack of screens, such that if we were to have a system where you could go to equipment and then say you hit a button and it would take you to the skill screen, it would know that the equip screen was on the stack before the skill screen, and if we hit back, we would come back here. Whereas like I've seen a lot of systems where instead you just like hard code stuff in. Currently this equip thing is a bit bugged, but regardless, it's more hard coded of like whenever I hit back from this specific screen, it always goes to this previous one. There's none of that in here. All of this is kind of generic, and only the screen controller really knows what's going on. The individual screens have no idea where they came from or where they're going. There's ways of getting that, but for the most part, it's pretty generic so that we can put anything on the stack and remove anything from the stack, which is pretty flexible. Okay, next. That's kind of a broad overview. Let's take a look at screens and let's talk a little bit about how screens work. So if we look at an individual screen, those screens essentially have references to components. If we look at one that has a little bit more data to it, like this one, this has a reference to a unit-driven parent controller. This one has ability select controller, and essentially these are pieces that this screen will update as we go in and out of these. Like as we hit buttons on those screens, like if we attempt to purchase or something, we might refresh those components with the new information. So, and for like, maybe we talk about the equip one, maybe the equip one's better. But if we go into like equip select, because we were looking at this one has like the equipped item definition, which is like the section at the top of the menu. And so like when we equip something, it will try and update that data accordingly. So screens have a bunch of references to the components. Those components exist in like a separate section, which are just a bunch of these things. I've also tried to genericize a lot of these down so that they don't have to be specific to any screen. They're kind of just universal. So let's start kind of mapping some of this stuff out. At the very base level, all of these components that we have are all derived from essentially, if we keep going back all the way through, and this is the thing that I think is, it's like overly complicated, and so I want to take a step back and try and figure some of this stuff out. So we have an eye screen component. Let's start there. Eye screen component, new shape. Let's make a square. Let's reduce the font a little bit, should still be readable. And then you please ignore. I wish, is there a way to like disable like it from thinking that any of my stuff is bad? That'd be nice. Okay, so we have screen component. This is kind of the base of all of our classes. Everything works off of screen component and everything inherits from it. This is an interface, and essentially the interface is saying that we expect that the screen component must have these functions, is what an interface is saying. An interface isn't like kind of like inheritance, if you know what that is. It's more just like, hey, if something is you know, based off of this interface, it must have an init, a terminate, and a refresh, which means if we have an object that we're treating as an iScreen component, we can call init, terminate, and refresh on it without ever having to know anything else about it, because we know that it must have these implemented. So we have screen component. Screen component is used as a base for setting up the menu screen component. So we're going to copy this guy, paste that, and then we're going to grab that and paste that in here. Make it a little bigger. And then we're going to ignore. Is there a way to turn off dictionary? It's fine. I won't dig into it. We'll just have to ignore every single one of these I bring in. So we've got menu screen component, which inherits from screen component. So let's add a line connecting these two like so, and we'll give it an arrow pointing this way. Okay. Now, menu screen component has get first, which is getting the first element in that menu, and it has registering and unregistering a callback. Which is basically like, hey, if someone pushes on a button, we want to be able to send back a message when that button has been pressed. What function should we call when a button is pressed on this menu item? And this is basically passing in that function we want to call. Then we have a data-driven screen component. So copy this guy. There seems fine. This one also inherits from iScreen component, and it is essentially a screen component that we know has data of a specific type. With this T, we can define a specific type that we expect this to have. So a simple example is this. That's not a simple one. Listen.
Simple to some people.
Trying to find a basic.
Speaking of simple, color isn't simple. What do you think of this color palette for the tree? Like, I had it all up on the side and looks quite nice, but now that I'm putting it in action, I'm a little more hesitant.
I think it's fine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I do like how there's a really good, like, hue shift going on. I think that's really, really fun, and I'm trying to go for a little bit more of a mysticism kind of, like a surreal kind of style here. So, I just didn't know if it was, like, a too dramatic of a hue shift or not.
No, I think it's okay.
Cool. I will continue growing my dragon tree. Flipped all of them one way though.
Okay.
I like that.
Okay. So then let's switch back to code. So this is a somewhat example. This is a simple. So we have a ability cost component, right? So this ability cost component is a data-driven screen component, which takes in an ability as a type. When we update this component with the ability data, it stores it, and then it on refresh will refresh its text object to be the mana cost of that ability, essentially. So this is an example of a data-driven screen component. It's a screen component that we know will take a specific type of data, we can update it with that specific set of data, and then we can refresh it, and it will update any text or any other information based off of it. Hello, Spartan. Welcome to the stream.
Hi, Spartan.
And then we...
Oh, he's got the egg.
Yeah. Okay.
Please
so
enjoy our new eggs.
We've added subscriber tiers. So we've got some different badges. Hello, Tobias Random. Welcome. Gonna be just hanging and doing some
Dragon trees.
Yeah, Drixie's gonna be doing some drawing in the background.
Oh, let's do.
honestly, normally I come into these with like a clear set goal of like, this is what I'm going to execute on. I'm going to do a thing, and we're just going to get it. Like, I'm going to have a plan. Today, there's like this thing that I've been putting off, and doing it on stream.
Kind of pushing your ambitions to stay focused.
Yeah, because this is a complicated problem, and so we're gonna break it down not just for stream but also for myself. You as well, Spartan. Thanks for popping in. Appreciate the hi. Okay, so we're gonna dig deep, is what I'm saying.
Oh no, I'm not ready. I didn't bring my scuba gear.
Okay, so we've got a data-driven. We've got data-driven components. So let's go back. Let's go to definition. So got screen component, which is used as a base for menu screen component and data-driven screen component. And then we have a poolable object screen component. And this is where things get a little like gross in some regards, because we have a system for pooling objects. If you're not familiar with pooling objects, essentially it's that loading things in a game can be slow. So if we want to make a button appear, so when we have these buttons are preset, we just have these buttons, they're always here, we always know these are going to be the 6 buttons. But when we go into skills, what abilities a character has, or one of our heroes, we don't necessarily know what abilities they're going to have or how many. So we have a list of these buttons, right? To generate each of these like elements would take a little bit of time. So instead, what we do is we generate like 40 of them when we launch the game, or some number. And anytime we need one, like when we populate this list, or when we populate this one, or when we populate this one, we grab one of those objects and we clean it out. We say, hey, dump your name, dump your node info, dump your SP info, just start from 0, and we're going to initialize it with the data that we want to show. And so doing it that way, you kind of upfront the load costs, so you'll have a bit of a load screen usually at the beginning, but once you have that load screen, all of those elements are going to be loaded for the rest of the game experience. And so that is the concept of pooling, essentially. And pooling is a system I've used in a couple different spots, but as we started working on the UI, it became clear that we wanted to have our pooling system integrated with our screen system. That's where things have gotten a little complicated. So we have this data-driven component, which is inheriting from the pooling system, or sorry, the pooling object is inheriting from data-driven screen component, because it is essentially a data-driven component that is also pooling. But there's another piece to that, which is that it also inherits from a poolable object. So if we grab this, bring this over here, and then grab poolable object. Poolable object is also something it inherits from. And again, the concept of the interfaces that we have means that it is not either of these things. It just, these interfaces say that whatever implements the poolable object screen component must have all of the functionality that these things say they should. So anything that inherits from this guy, which is like this one, this guy must have all the functionality of, oh no, not this one. This guy.
We got some more Minecraft stream challenge points.
Angry Alexandria popping in with another 2,000 points, dropping them off.
Love it, thank you.
Got us up to 85%.
Very nice.
And so I think we're well on the way there. Okay, where was I? Also, you have the egg. We changed up the badges for subscribers, and you know, we've made it so that egg is the first tier, and it slowly hatches. Well, if I ever say anything, then they're gonna see the topmost badge that we have, which is 1 year. And And when we get to 1 year, you get a thing. In fact, I'll post it now. So if I'm going to just post a coup in chat, and I'm going to you get a little thing, a little griffin baby. I plan on adding more, but we're only up to the 1 year mark. I do think that, like, well, obviously I am going to have the highest badge
Can
tier.
anybody out-subscribe the leader?
No. But I think Amorphous is the next highest at like 33 months, I think.
Yeah.
But anyways, I have to add more tiers. But right now, up to 1 year of badges. And I think it goes like a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and a year. There's a bunch of different images for it.
We worked hard.
Yeah, I mean, they're very small. It's hard to get that right. Okay, where was I in terms of... Okay, so we have poolable objects, and I was trying to explain that basically anything that is inheriting from this must implement all of the above stuff. So it has an init, it has an update, it has a terminate, it has all of the things, refresh component, that is said to be inside of this thing, inside of this thing, and inside of this thing. Let's take a look at poolable object and see where that's coming from. So, poolable object is a generic in that it has data. So let's and it inherits from a base version of it. So I guess I should add the T part. So this is a generic version of this. This is a templatized version. I have to make this slightly longer. Okay, and so poolable object doesn't have to have data. You can have an object that doesn't have data associated with it. You can have just it be a poolable object, but you can have a poolable object that does have data associated with it. And then poolable object and data screen component are used to create this next level one, which is a screen component that is also poolable. Essentially, it's combining the properties of both of these into kind of a next level object. And then if we go back and take a look here, this guy is used by... We're looking for where this thing gets referenced, not as an object that we use, but as a part of a class. These are all inside of the templatization. So it's only 2 spots, it looks like. There's an abstract class called data driven parent component, which inherits from it. And then there is a ability unit data driven component, which is basically the same thing but super specific, which I don't love. So let's just start here and look at this guy. So if we... Can I just create a box again? Oh, then I have to set all the like templating up. So we'll just copy and paste, and I'll go back and grab this. Okay, so this guy inherits from here, and it is connected to this one in this direction. So data-driven parent component is where we're getting, like, we have all of this connections, but at the core, this thing is really what drives most of the game at this point. If we look at this, there's a bunch of different classes that inherit from it. And they inherit, and a lot of them are empty, and they don't have any data. So the reason for this is that if we look internally what this thing's doing, this thing is a component that is essentially on initialize. It loops through and finds all components on the game object that are of type data driven screen component. So if we go back and look at the list, it's going through and finding anything that is of this type, this base type of data driven screen component, as long as the object is of the right type that we defined here. So this ability data driven component is going through and finding all things that are the data-driven screen component that are of type ability. So if we take a look at this, we can find ones that are based off of ability, like this one, like the cost one. It will find this ability cost component if it is on the same object. And then once it finds that object, what it does as the parent component is basically on update, it will update all components under it that are of type ability. On terminate, it will terminate all components. On refresh, it'll refresh all. And what this allows us to do is essentially have a whole bunch of little tiny components that all do little things. So if we look at the skill components and we look at the skill menu list and we look at the actual individual buttons, this button that we're seeing right here on screen that says Flame Stab Nodes SP, this thing has a ability spec, which is technically different from ability, but it's all the same stuff. So we have ability spec, which is saying, hey, I want to find all components, or an ability spec data parent. It's a parent object for ability specs, and it'll try and find all components that use ability spec underneath of it. And so we're trying to find, so when this thing starts up, it'll find the, if I expand this, can we see the names a little easier? We can. It'll find the equip component, the name component, the SP component, and the node component. And essentially what each of these things are doing is updating this piece of information. It's updating one small part of this whole button. So this equip icon one is updating whether or not the equip icon is attached. So if we go in here and I hit Y, we can see there's a little icon that appears as we equip things, and we can only equip up to 2 different skills at a time. But whether it's on or off, i.e. whether or not it's equipped or not, is managed by this component. And it will determine whether it's on or off based off of whether the data it has says that it should be equipped. So this has a big list of all of the components that are affecting this button. And then someone else is just updating this guy. So if we do a quick search for this guy, we find that there is one thing called skill info box that uses it. Is there someone else that's handling this? There's a skill menu, and that skill menu contains a bunch of the objects as well. Okay, so now we're going to get into another half of this. So what's happening in this situation is that all of those buttons are buttons inside of a menu, and most of the time that menu is in control of instantiating all of those buttons and setting them all up and keeping them up to date. And so at a level, if we go back to our chart, here is where we have like an ability component, and this ability component is going to communicate to all of the data-driven components under it. So it's going to find all of its data-driven components, and it's going to contact them, and it's going to update them. But who contacts and updates and controls this guy? That's menus. So now we got to kind of go down the menu tree, which is kind of a separate area. So if we go back up a couple levels, let's go back to the interfaces, and we scroll back up, we had the menu components. So if we look at the menu components and see how those are used, the menu components are used by one class called menu component. Okay, so if we, so this is kind of a red flag at this point, because the fact that we have an interface for menu component, but menu component is only used, that like we have this interface that says, hey, if we ever have a menu component, it should have these values. This is really good if you want to have multiple different things that are all having different types. So when we look at our even our data-driven one, our data-driven one is used here in a bunch of different spots where it's like, this is a class that defines it, this is a class that defines it, this is a class that defines it. They're all different classes and they all do different things, but we're uniting them under one interface that says, hey, we can treat all of these different objects with and like the same in that we can know if it is of this type object. We can call update, we can call refresh on it. But the fact that the menu component, the menu screen component, is only used for one class is a little weird, and the fact that we never use it as a variable name. You'll notice that when I go into the data-driven one, we can see I have to scroll down to find even the classes that are using it, because it's used in a lot of spots by like the parent that I was looking at. If we look at the data-driven parent, which is the simplest version, it's treating all of these things as data screen components, and that allows us to do a bunch of unique things like update them all, terminate them all, and refresh them all without knowing what each of them actually are. They're just mysteries, but we don't care. We just treat them as this base class. But the menu, we don't ever even use it as a variable, which to me means this menu screen component doesn't need to exist at all. We could delete this interface and we'd be fine. The reason to have this, and the reason I probably created it, is future-proofing in case we ever wanted to have more complex systems, where we wanted to have different types of menus. Interesting. Okay, well, we're gonna not mess any code up right now. We're gonna continue investigating and kind of categorizing everything. But for right now, can I change the color of this backdrop? I can. Let's make this kind of an orangey color, because this is kind of like a little weird to me, and so I'm going to just flag it as a little weird. So, sorry, specifically, I was grabbing this guy, and it's actually this one I want to flag. I want to flag this one as a little weird. We're going to flag this one back to the base color. Okay, so we have menu component. Now, is this generic? And by generic, I mean have that little T symbol that says I'm going to define what a variable is when I create this class. It is. So we're going to grab that. We're going to slam that there. Okay, and then this is connected to this guy. Now, the menu component is made up of an I menu, okay, or sorry, has a reference to an I menu, and I menu is a different interface, and that is used by a couple different menu types. We have a menu list, which is most of our stuff, but we also have like a menu graph, which when we go into the next level in from here, we have this system in which when we unlock these, we can go left or right. This is no longer just a straight list. This is what we would call a graph, because it kind of branches out in a variety of different ways. So we have menu component, which has a menu, and it also has some functions for refreshing, terminating, and init, because that's how all screen components work. All screen components must have those pieces. And it also has the register callbacks, because that's what this thing says. Okay. But essentially, this component is just in charge of updating iMenu. So it's kind of interesting. So if we grab some of these things, let's move Poolable all the way to the right. Let's kind of reorganize some of this stuff a little bit, and let's not waste any space. Try and like condense things down a little bit. Because clearly there's more to be done on the right side. So this menu component is in charge of managing I menus. So if we come over here, we have I menu. And then I menu is used by 2 different classes. There is the menu graph and the menu list. Okay, and so this connects to this guy this way and connects to this guy this way. Okay. Now these guys in turn are essentially just setting up some pretty basic functions. iMenu has a refresh, has a populate, has a set callback, has a clear, has an add, has get buttons, get first. It's interesting that I've separated the menu component and the iMenu out. There feels like... Let's lay this out. So we're gonna say that these things are, this guy here has a connection, but that's not a inheritance connection. There is a, like, what do we want to do? It's a line, but let's make it like a dotted line. Oh, I changed its outer. Okay, let's connect them. There's a, we're gonna do a little square, and we're gonna make it a dotted line. Okay, so these two are this one references this one, right? And this menu component, where does it get called and used? It gets called and used by two very special menus. The main menu, which has a preset of buttons that already exist and we always have loaded, and a data-driven menu component, which is basically a menu component that is also a data-driven screen component. It is both of these things. So let's ignore the more like the special case one, and let's grab the one that will eventually be used by several of the different menus in our game. Are all using this data-driven menu component. So let's grab that, and let's add that to our list. I need to copy and paste, and then I have to go back into Visual Studio and grab this again. All right, we're getting it mapped out slowly but surely. So this is referenced by 2 pieces of information. This guy uses this interface, or this class, I should say, and it uses the data-driven one. So this goes here, and that has this arrow type, and this one has this arrow type. This is why I felt it was necessary to kind of go through this, is that this is becoming like a bit of a web, and when things become very webby and interconnected, it usually means that you've overcomplicated things. Now, there's a case to be made for future-proofing and making things expandable, so that if you need to, you can make them better, but there's also a time to stop and like look at things and go, I feel like I've lost track of where my system is and how it works, and maybe I need to like dig deeper and understand it a little better. So this is all fine. We need to keep going deeper and understanding, like, where does this tree lead? How do these things actually start getting used and interacted with? So we still need to go further. I'm going to take a small moment, though, and we're going to pop over to Drixie, who I've been not ignoring, but, like, I'm deep diving.
In the corner over here.
How
so alone.
How goes art things while I, like, dive?
I have made a pretty tree, I would like to think.
Yeah, you happy with it?
I'm quite happy with it. It's nice and simple and mystical, and the colors did turn out to be pretty on point. Now I realize I've changed the scenery of this area a little bit, so now I just have to realign and get it all situated so it fits properly where I want it.
This is mostly for your own reference, to be clear though, because at some point you're gonna have to stitch all of these pieces into like one long piece of art.
Yes, so, you know, to make my life easier for future, Rixie, I'm gonna set it up properly now.
Okay.
Plus, it gives us a really good idea of, like, this is what it's gonna look like.
Yep.
Is that what we like? I kind of do, because it kind of hides, like, oh, that's a cool looking tree. But, oh, it's a dragon tree. I also missed a pixel, which is great to find out. So I think that's kind of fun. I'm definitely not gonna fuss too much right now. I just want to get them done and popped over to you so we can put them in and see how they roll out, because I'm sure there's gonna be variations happening along the adventure, which is game development.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna get to that at some point today.
If you don't, no big deal.
Yeah, I do want the leading thing that we're trying to get to, but it's like a deep dive here to try and get to this point, is I'm trying to get to the point where eventually we can kind of tweak the animations. We have the animations here for these screens modifying, and we have the screen scrolling left and right here. But before I go too deep on like fixing up this so that like, oh right, I didn't switch back. Or I didn't, did I? No, I didn't switch back. So when we have these screens where it scrolls left and right, the screen that Drixie is currently working on is this one, which right now is just using the static background.
Yeah,
but
it's not doing anything fun yet.
No, but when we go to this one, we scroll left and right. So Drixie is working on the version for that other screen.
So I do have the ice one up here, like how I broke it down with the main starting phrase, our smear frame, we like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this frame here, there's a big dividing yellow bar. That's kind of where the transition period is, and this is going to have an overlapping sector. That's how you've called it, right? This is the overlap?
Yeah, there's kind of where...
A layover?
Yeah, because in the actual setup of it,
You can see this repeated.
Yeah. And like the reason you were doing that is because the screens look different in the different states, and so you're able to kind of draw each state by setting it up the way you have. But yeah, you end up with repeats.
I'm sure there's a more effective way, but this is the way I found that kind of just worked for me.
Yeah, but collapsing it down.
And then I transition to the final stage.
When we get to the final stage, but the thing I'm trying to get to is to be able to modify some of this and have the transitions a little bit easier to do. Mm-hmm. But doing that, if I do that with my system in kind of not like the broken state, but like the somewhat confusing state that I'm trying to resolve right now, I might have to redo a bunch of work. So I'm trying to stop before I do any more polish work and like cleanup work, and try and make it so that like I really fully understand exactly what my system is doing, and that I'm happy with it, because we might not need to make any changes to this tree of like connections when I really dig into each of them and how they're all working. But I really want to make sure that I know what my system is doing and that I have like a clear understanding. And I might use this archive video myself in order to go back and understand my code.
They're very useful that way.
Yeah, but so okay, cool. Checking in with you, going back to deep diving.
Deep dive.
Deep dive. I'll check back in another little bit here, but we got to the point where we know that the data-driven menu component is connected to the menu component and the data-driven screen component. And this kind of gets into like the real problem. At its core, a lot of our screens are referencing these guys. So if we look at like the action menu or the equip menu, this menu is essentially being referenced by a specific screen, and we kind of do the same setup for all of our menu screens in the same way. And I recently made a change to my screen so that this is kind of genericized. Let's go take a look at the equip screen. So this screen inherits from a data-driven menu screen, and that is essentially a menu screen that we expect to have a data-driven menu component, in which we don't know what type it's going to take, but that we can treat it as a generic class with specific types of like variables we can pass in. And it's going to have potentially a list of components that might update based off of those menu pieces. So when I go back into here and we go to the skill screen and I go up and down on these characters, this menu on the right is updating based off of what selection we've made for each of our characters. And so our data menu screen is using the data-driven menu component and the data-driven screen component as like pieces that it can like grab and update. It doesn't know exactly what typing or what it's going to use or need, or it doesn't matter, but and we don't know what type the component is going to use or need either, but we know that they're going to be of the type menu and of the type screen component, and that they'll be able to be updated via like some pretty simple calls. Like on open, we're going to initialize the menu, we're going to register some callbacks, we're going to add all of our menu components, we're going to initialize all of those menu components. On update, we're going to update our menu selection. We're on callback, we're going to send off some functions which each of the classes will decide how to implement, and we're also going to refresh, and that'll refresh all of the components. And so like this thing's doing a lot of generic stuff so that we don't have to write the same code over and over again in each of our screens. When we look at like the equip screen, it's just calling base open, and that's doing a bunch of the base logic for setting up its screens. And then it has an on submit call, and that's it. This is a very simple class. It doesn't have a lot going on. And that's because we've written everything so that all of it happens inside of like kind of the base class. And it can do all of that base logic because we've genericized all of our components and our menus. So at its core, this class, maybe purplish pink.
I like that color.
Let's do more purple. This class and this class are used by our screens. So we can try and better illustrate that. So if we come down and we look at, okay, a screen is an eye screen, this is like the base of what a screen is made of. And then the screen is implemented by a data-driven menu screen, which is essentially a type of screen. And this guy, at its core, is referencing the two guys in purple. So let's do connection here with this arrow, and then make this guy purple as well. So these guys are connected in a way. The purple ones are all connected. All right. Is that kind of the end of the line? There's a couple other areas I want to go through, but at the end of the day, we have menus. Those menus are of type data menu component. The data-driven menu screen, which is like the base of 90% of our screens, because 90% of our screens are based off of menus that you click through. They take in that data-driven menu component, but we don't know if it's going to be a equip menu, an item menu, a node menu, whatever. And then it also has a bunch of data-driven screen components. So that's kind of end of the line. When we get to the root of our game, like screens, that is like where everything gets implemented, or where it gets used. Is we have these guys, and then we can kind of represent this as like this goes out into all our screens. Not all. Maybe I could say most of our screens are.
This is not the screen you were looking for.
No, maybe. Okay, most of our screens are implementing this object, and this object is kind of all the screens. It's most of the screens. It's fine. And then we have a bunch of different menus and components that we create Well, menus are still basically just components. They're just a little bit more special because they're in charge of buttons and stuff. Okay, let's go back and take a look at how this guy is being used, because it's still a little bit more complicated and we didn't dig all the way down. But I wanted to give a little context on how it's being used so that we better understand what its purpose is. All right.
What is this block in my way?
Somewhere on one of your many layers there is a cube.
Oh no. It's like way down deep somewhere because it's not any of these.
You found your journey.
Oh no. Not in frame 3. What do I do? It doesn't exist. Ah, it's somewhere in frame 4. Gotcha.
Block in color.
Yeah, literally blocked by color. Okay. Now that my adventure is complete.
Okay. So this guy is a data menu screen component, and it is used by these guys. And so what does this do? Okay, this is the action menu. Is the action menu, that's the combat stuff. That's pretty complicated. Let's take a look at something that's a little simpler. I mean, that's too simple. Unit select menu. Okay, so unit selector menu is let's see it in an example. Let's find an example of it. Okay, so this is the unit selector menu. This is used inside of, oh, it's inside of combat. I don't want to go into combat. Combat's super complicated, and then I have to go and find the combat screen. Let's find one that exists. What about equip unit menu? What is this one? It is this guy. So if we go back and we go to equip, we toggle this on and off. It's this guy. Okay. So we have guard thief here. This is a menu that's populating 2 buttons based off of our party. And yeah, okay. So this is a menu that says, hey, I'm a data-driven menu component, which we know from our breakdown means that it's actually like a bunch of different things. It's a menu component, it's an I'm screen component, it's a screen component, it's a data-driven screen component. It's all those things. And it is taking in the type of poolable object unit and list of unit groups. So this on update gets a list of data, which is a list of units. So this list is our team, the people who are in our game. So if we look here with like guard and thief are like kind of our 2 party members right now. Technically there's also a third, which we can see if we go to the skill menu, which is the lightning character, which eventually becomes a different character. It's an old name, but this is indented because this is the companion to the thief. It's kind of its monster ally. And so the 2 main characters we have is guard and thief. And so what we do is with that list, we loop through all the units. We get all the units in each of the unit groups because we have our hero and companion grouped together into a unit group. We check each unit inside of that unit group and we loop through them and we say, hey, if this unit's row is front row, which is essentially kind of a hacky way of telling whether or not it's the companion or the hero. Front row is where the heroes are in the main menu, basically. In game, they can swap back and forth. When you're in combat, you can swap who's in front row, whether it's the monster companion or the hero. But you can kind of switch back and forth. But in the menus, the hero is always in front, so it's kind of a way of telling which is which. So we're basically only grabbing the heroes and none of the companions. And if it is a hero, we are going to add to our game object pool list a a object with ID equip unit menu button, and we're going to pass in unit, which is the unit that we're on when we're looping through, as the data for that object. And so if we take a look at the game object pool list, basically it goes to the game object pool manager, it allocates something based off ID and with the data, and then it gets the poolable interface and stores it. And essentially this thing is a list that manages poolable objects. So if we take a look here, we can see poolable objects is kind of at the top right over here. So this is a game object list that is managing like the add and remove of things that we're pooling. So we basically, this is getting a new button and saying, hey, populate that button with this data from this unit. And then we set up the parent and we get the button and we add that button to our menu. Okay, so interesting. So at the top here, we clear the list and we clear the menu, and then we repopulate everything, and then we call init whenever we update. And this init is the init inside of menu component, which is populating the navigation and the callbacks so that we know when a button is pressed, essentially. All right, so this is an example of a menu, and the whole thing with all of this crazy complicated extraction is to get it down to this level of detail where it's just 2 parameters and a function, and that function is pretty bare bones. We've made our system so complicated with like all of these interconnecting pieces so that when we want to create a new menu, it's really simple to generate a new menu because there's a bunch of other things being done behind the scenes through like a lot of our like parent classes that do a lot of the hookup and the kind of connection pieces. So this seems fine. Is there any other like major connections I want to call out when I think about this stuff? I guess technically this is referencing a poolable object screen component. So there is a connection here between these two things, because essentially the poolable object screen components is what the menu component creates to make all of its buttons or its elements in that menu. Fascinating. Okay. So there's a connection between these two things. I have nothing else to say on that for now. I'm gonna have to think about that. Okay, so this is fine. So let's go back to, that's how a menu gets generated. Let's stop. This is how a menu gets generated. This is how they're connected. This is used by these guys. That all is making some sense. Let's take a quick look at how this works, because this is kind of off to one side and I don't entirely know how, like, what is the iMenu stuff, like what is a menu list and what is a menu graph doing that a menu component needs it to be a separate object and not part of itself. So we clearly are adding this menu here is basically just getting the iMenu. So that iMenu that we called out, this is essentially saying, hey, we have a menu, and that menu could be a list or a graph. But when we create our buttons that we want to show, we add the button to the menu list. What does this add call? This is a specific ad written by iMenu. Okay. So this is setting up the list of buttons. And menu.clear, I assume, is, yeah, going to be clearing that list of buttons is my expectation. So if we go back to the base level, this, I guess not that base level, this base level. If we come back here, this has the menu. It populates the menu. We can get the menu buttons. We can get the first menu, the first in the menu. We can update the selection for the menu. We can call some callbacks. We can tell the menu to refresh, and we can tell the menu to populate. So at its core, why can't we just be talking to the menu? I guess all this is really doing is simplifying the init call. So instead of having to call iMenu populate and iMenu setup callback, all we have to do is call init. Yeah, because everything else is just a direct call right down to menu, other than registering the callback. Interesting. So it's really just this callback logic that this thing is kind of abstracting out, but otherwise this thing doesn't do much. Does anyone reference menu component directly? Menu screens. Interesting. And a menu screen is different from a data menu screen in that it's just referencing a menu component instead of a data menu component. Okay. There's something funky about this. In general, there's kind of something weird about all of this menu component stuff. Just something feels wrong about the way we're handling this. And I think what I'm trying to get to is at its core, when we look at a screen, if we go to like main menu, no, I want to look at a screen, not a menu, I want to look at a screen. Show me iScreen. I feel like at its core in some spots, I kind of want to treat a menu and a data-driven component as the same thing. I feel like we're separating the concept of a menu out from like a data-driven screen component simply because we want to do some extra function calls that are specific to a menu. Which kind of makes some sense, but also kind of just feels like an overcomplication. Okay, let's look at the other ones. Okay, so we looked at the menu itself, and it doesn't look like it... what it's doing doesn't feel necessary. It feels like it's just passing along information to another menu. It's possible this thing was more complicated, and as I coded and built things, I could have simplified this down to the point where this class is no longer needed. If we go look at iMenu, this is saying that this has to have this information. It's also interesting that iMenu has like a refresh in here, which is like something that like a base component has. we look at, yeah, it has a init and a terminate for a screen component. Does this have an init and a terminate? It doesn't. But it kind of does, because essentially populate navigation and set callback are kind of its init call. And clear is kind of its terminate. I feel like iMenu might actually be the base of what we want to be doing. Okay. I heard some hums from you, Drixie. What's going on art side of things?
I'm just trying to decide on the style of rock. I started over here as more of a horizontal shading, but it's a little irregular. I'm not really sure I'm going through. I'm going back to my most amazing mountain work absolutely ever and really kind of pull out what I did to succeed to make this look like a rock so well with only 2 tones. And I'm hesitant to say I made it look really good because I had a 3rd accent color, not just 2 tones, which I'm working with everywhere here, but this looks good because it has 3 colors because of the snow. So now I'm like, do I want to have patches of grass? I was already thinking of like vines and mushrooms, but like I have the soft rule for myself that I'm only doing a 2-tone color scheme for the majority. I did break it on the tree here, I just noticed, which is fine. It's a focus, but I might just start going with the classic 3 colors. I'm not really sure yet. What's your thoughts? Greenery on the rocks, or should we just keep them very plain? It's a tough call.
I feel like it's a little too plain right now.
Yeah, I could go in there and add tons of detail, but I don't want to make it over detailed, so it'll be big blocky details.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that this is going to be it's gonna be quick. It's going to be a quick transition. We're going to basically go from it being flat on the top menu, and then we're going to have the camera pan down to this bottom menu. And when it goes up and down between them, you'll only see this section in between the smaller rectangle for a few moments.
Briefly.
So I'm also fine with like you blocking it in, I think, and just like getting something that looks fine-ish, and we can always come back and refine the details at a later point. Although if you want to keep poking at it, you can keep poking at it, but like you spent a lot of time on like that mountain, for example, that you pointed out, and that mountain was something.
Yeah, that mountain took me a long time.
But that mountain was something that again will be a very short period of time that it'll appear on screen.
This took me a long time. This is mostly color though. But yeah, this was before we decided on how fast it went, so we weren't really sure what we were getting into.
Yep.
But now that we know that this is just a little zoom, we can give this a little less love. And spend more love down here.
I do wonder about maybe adding like tree roots to this to break it up. Maybe not grass, but if you were...
I have these little vines, which would be really cute.
Yep, but not even vines,
like
but just
roots
like
coming through.
Roots coming through. I know that was something.
I do like that.
That was something you did on one of the sewer references, but potentially,
yeah.
if you could do something similar here, that might help break it up so it doesn't feel so like blank in spots while not adding an over amount of detail.
Dragon root.
I'm gonna leave it on you for the main part right now, and I'm gonna try and just I don't know, maybe not be quiet, but I'm gonna ponder for a little bit here, because I think we've come to the point where we've got most of it marked in. At its core, it's mostly there. I've explained most of it.
Yeah, I think even I followed you a little bit. I couldn't repeat it if I tried, but like, I don't know how to code, and I think you did a very good job explaining how it all is interconnected.
Interesting. Is this also... Sorry, I'm just messing with OBS a little bit because it's not really showing exactly what I think it should be showing.
Oh, well, that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, because this is the full screen. If I go here, it's not showing everything.
Thank you so much for the contribution.
unlockable characters, dropping off more points towards the Minecraft stream. Appreciated. Getting close now.
Gotta boot up those bits. Those blocks.
That's...
Boot up the blocks.
At the rate we're going, we'll probably see the Minecraft stream tomorrow, more than likely. I'm excited for that, to be honest.
I am too.
I'm excited to explore the edge of the world, because where we generated, like, because I generated the world from beta all the way up to 1.18.1, the edge of the world is going to be like hard cutoffs, and there's going to be a bit of like weird generation in spots, which is just kind of natural for doing a process of upgrading a world all the way from such an old save format all the way up. And I'm just excited to see what that transition looks like. It could be pretty basic, but if there's any like sheer cliffs along like ocean edges, that might be interesting. And I'm excited to see those interesting pieces.
Does everybody know you're bringing back the old save?
Yeah, I went back and did a video when I announced the Minecraft Stream Challenge originally, and kind of walked through the whole world with everyone.
Oh, love it.
Yeah, over like 30-45 minutes. It was really cool. It was really, really cool.
Nostalgia 101.
Yeah. So, I'm just trying to on the fly live. Why is this device capture? That's the display. It's like cropped in some way. Oh, yeah. That works. Oh, maybe it was on purpose in order to like show a specific part of the screen. Because if I do make it full sized, it feels like it's off. Yeah, it's cropped is what it is. Interesting. I probably did that for a reason. We'll just go to just you for now.
Oh.
As I dig through and try and understand what I need to do.
I'm just pulling up roots versus rocks references. Which is a true factor, because they truly are powerful things.
Unlockable characters in Twitch chat says, funny part is I'm not even the biggest fan of Minecraft, which is fair. But I appreciate the contributions. I think it'll be fun. We'll see. I'm interested to just explore that world, because 1.18's generation seems really neat and really cool. And there's just a lot that I haven't seen in that world. But probably still going to be doing like the Pokemon Nuzlocke, going to be doing game dev stuff. I'm going to poke at Stardew for sure. But the Minecraft will be interesting. I'm interested to see how that goes. And I think at this point it's pretty sure that we're going to get there, so. Tobias Random contributing 2,000 points towards it. Thank you. That's putting us up over 90%. Only need 4,500 more points.
That happened fast. Gotta go fast.
You gotta go fast.
Gotta go fast.
Okay.
I do love building in Minecraft. I thought that was my favorite part. Not very good, but I enjoyed it. It exploded like, what, 3 times? With the Enderman? I kept trying.
It's a good point too. We did play a little bit where we got to the point where we beat the quote-unquote end dragon, but like had a lot of help from other people. And I'm curious to see if I can get through that part too, because I've never on my own in a solo game played through and beat Minecraft, because when we streamed Minecraft 10 years ago, there wasn't an end. There wasn't like an end to that game because it was still in beta. So that's probably one of the first things I'll do, is just try and like quote-unquote beat the game. Plus there's like really cool things at the end that I'd like to try and get to, so.
I'm very proud to say my first arrow I ever shot on Minecraft was a success.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah? What did you do with that first arrow?
I killed the Ender Dragon with my first arrow.
after many other people made many more shots.
My first arrow, I killed the dragon. I had 2 achievements in a row. First arrow, congratulations, and then ended the game, and I was very proud.
Okay. I don't know what I'm trying to do anymore.
I don't know about the roots. I think they're, I don't. I mean, size maybe? I think I'm being thrown off by the perception here.
The perspective?
Perspective, that's the ticket. But it seems like it's okay. This is just a stubby island. Maybe I need to bring the green in. I'll fuss later.
Okay, we're gonna come back. All right, so here's where I'm at. The reason that iMenu component is separated out from the menu component, or sorry, the iMenu is separated from the menu component, is because the iMenu is really just saying, hey, this is a menu in that it controls a bunch of buttons and it controls a bunch of It controls the navigation and the pressing of buttons. That is what the iMenu does. If we look at iMenu and we look at the simpler example of the menu list, at its core, it has the ability to get the first button in the list of buttons. It has the ability to get all of buttons from the list of buttons. It has the ability to add a button to its list of buttons. And it can clear its list of buttons. It's really just maintaining this list of buttons. And then it has a populate navigation, which is basically just going through and saying, hey, in order of this list, I want to make it so that the up selection and the down selection is the next button down and the next button above. And like, then it sets up navigation via like basically making it so every button navigation component has a selection to the up thing and the down thing. And that's, if it has horizontal, it goes left and right, and if it has automatic, it just lets Unity do whatever it wants to do in terms of like what direction goes to which button. But it's essentially just setting it up so that when I push up, I go to the button above, or loop around basically. But it's just connecting the buttons. That's all Populate Navigation is doing. And then set button callback is essentially just saying, hey, when that button is clicked, right, we want to add a listener for calling back to some function, and when that button is selected, we want to call back to some function, and we call back to that function saying, hey, we hit submit, or we were selected, or we were deselected. At its core, all the iMenu piece is trying to do is manage a list of Unity buttons. That's all it's trying to do. And the reason that that's separated out from the menu component, and why there's two, and I think it's partly a like bad naming is really a big problem here, is that they're not like menu and menu component. It's like one is like, hey, the button manager and like managing button like connections and button presses. And the menu component is, hey, I want to control one of those menus and have it be accessible from our component system, which is a completely different set of architecture. So it's like two completely different systems. One is revolving around managing manage list of buttons. Is what this is doing. And then this guy, and to some extent this guy is essentially allowing us to interface with these menus and gain access to these menus without like muddying up our component system with having to have all of this very specific logic around like button list management. So even though this seems very empty, this menu component, it doesn't do a whole lot. The reason why it's separated is just so that we don't have to care how menus work. If we wanted to add more logic, then we could just add more logic. And it doesn't have to matter. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to matter that it's connected or not connected. Like it's complete. The iMenu system is a completely separate system that's just about managing button lists, and it doesn't have to know about or function in any way like a screen component. It does essentially have a refresh though. What does the refresh do in iMenu? And Populate Navigation is essentially an init call because it doesn't take any data. So it's just initializing. Does it have to be separated? Interesting. Okay. So this is where there's a little gotcha with that phrase. So I just explained that the reason why we have this as a separate piece from this is so that we don't have to worry about any of the screen component stuff. It just exists, and it just can handle managing buttons, and it doesn't need to care about any of this stuff. This defeats that whole statement, which is that at the end of the day, it still has a refresh, which apparently gets the screen component on the buttons and calls refresh. So if we're doing this, is an iMenu not just a screen component then? And the fact that we're doing a get component here is so okay. Let's talk about get component for a second. So get component is great in a lot of spots. It is essentially a way for Unity to go grab a specific thing. And if you don't know where that thing is, or if you're not 100% sure if you can access it before you start the game, it's really useful to be able to do a get component in some spots. To use an analogy though, get component though is having to do a search. It's having to do a lookup. So if we put that in terms of like, let's say you go to a grocery store and that grocery store has, you know, it is a mom and pop grocery store. It has one level. It's got maybe like 6 aisles, and you're in there to get some eggs and to get some milk and some bread. You're going to be able to walk in there, walk up and down the 6 aisles or so, find what you're looking for, and get out. It's not that bad. The analogy there is if you have a game in which there is not a lot of objects, in which the objects are fairly reduced, there's not a lot of stuff in the game to search through. If you then take a comparison...
There's redemption.
We
must hydrate.
Unlockable characters with the hydrate mid-explanation. It's
How
fine.
dare. Interrupted. But thank you. I do enjoy my tea.
Hydration complete.
No, only if we had a redemption for cookies.
I don't...
Can we just unlock cookies?
Cookies don't magically appear. Okay.
Man.
So to the analogy though. So that example of the mom and shop grocery store is if you have a small number of objects, that lookup can be not too bad. And it's still somewhat annoying to go in and like have to find those things, though at the end of the day there is some effort to go track that stuff down. If you instead had a situation where you had a very complicated system, so instead of trying to get component on the exact object, but we're getting component in parent, we're actually in this case going up a bunch of levels and trying to find something that matches this type somewhere up higher up. And so you've got to keep going up until you eventually find the thing you're looking for. And so the more we have to search and the further we're going to search, the more costly it is. And so that analogy would be more like if you walk into a big grocery store that has 6 levels with multiple escalators hidden around the building in multiple different areas, and there's like 40 aisles on every single one of those floors, and you need to find Pop-Tarts. It's like where do you start? Where do you go? And it's a super like costly thing to do. And so get component is just understanding like when you want to make that small little like, hey, I'm just going to make a small trip to try and find a thing, and when I'm in a department store and it's going to take me a while to find the thing I'm trying to track down. And like, this is probably not one of those super costly calls, but it is a little scary because it's on a refresh, right? The register callback, this get component is happening one time when we initialize all the buttons. Possibly there's a spot where we might have to do it multiple times depending on a bunch of the other things, but ideally this get component is in one spot in searching on one specific object for a specific component, and it's happening one time. This is a refresh call where we don't know how many levels we're going to have to go up in the parent hierarchy, like how many folder structures is a way of thinking of it. We have to go up to find this component, and we don't know how often refresh is going to be called, and also we don't know how many buttons are in our list. If we have like 40 buttons, this might be in a really expensive call. So seeing this function makes me feel like this is a bit of a crazy setup. I almost feel like instead of having a list of buttons, maybe we should have a list of button screen components, which we can then call refresh on, and it'll do all its refresh stuff without any kind of madness. And then this becomes way more integrated then with the screen system. It's no longer as clean. Okay. There's a potential refactor here. And I don't know if I want to handle this on screen, but like at its core, can we add comments? Add a comment. Okay. So iMenu is managing a list of buttons. But it's doing a get of iScreen component on refresh. at its core, iMenu is really about updating and managing the list of buttons. That's really what it's for. By having the refresh, it feels like it's more integrated with the iScreen component than it should be. And so there's potentially, if we want to refresh, maybe menu screen component or the menu component could be more complicated. That's a potential thought. Okay. This is an important comment towards this thing. Now, what we do with that, I'm not sure, but something is starting to crumble here. Something is weird about the way that this is being handled.
Crumbles.
Almost like cookies. I see you, chat. All right, so.
But do you see the Drixie? Drixie's giving the people what they want.
No. No. You can't give in.
I am the instigator. Oh, it's upside down. Oh no.
Aha! You have failed.
No! You win again, Batman. Cookie. Flying UFO cookies. And now I want cookies. Oh no.
You're gonna go make cookies?
Maybe later.
Okay.
I'll make cookies spiritually for chat.
Okay.
Anyway, back to less tasty rocks.
Okay, so how do I... So there's a thing there. I don't really know if that's a super important part of this. Let's dig into the next big thing. So I've kind of walked through the whole system. We found some areas that feel slightly weird to us. They're highlighted orange because they're kind of like, something doesn't seem right. This is only used in one spot, which is used by this thing. This thing's only purpose is to reference this thing. This thing does most of the work, and this thing doesn't really do anything at all. And then this thing inherits from this weird mess of stuff, but also inherits from this thing. And then these things are both used by the data menu screen. And then there's like this weird circle that happens where like Poolable Object screen components are like instantiated and used by the data menu components because menus instantiate poolable objects essentially. But they in turn are data driven components, which is the same type as this. Like there's something weird. Okay. And then that leads us into the reason why, like the symptom that led me to dig into all this. And so if we look at our screen controller, menus, we want to find iScreen. Not ice cream, iScreen.
I like it. Is there crystals in the Shadow Nation? Did we decide on that?
We haven't really talked about crystals a whole lot.
No.
You can do whatever though. Again, you can just add.
It.
You can add what you want. Have you added a tablet yet? I know you were hiding tablets.
No, the tablet's on this one.
Okay. You could hide another tablet there if you want.
No,
you could also
I think
do
one per thing though. Maybe.
You could do a cave. You could have like a little opening with a little grass nook on the bottom with like a little cave entrance embedded in it. Maybe some roots.
So there's a quick reference on cave references for this, but I'm coming up with like platformer images, not really like how do you draw a cave, just inside cave games.
I mean,
cool.
Final Fantasy VI is the first game that comes to mind when I think of like cave entrances, and that they had a lot of mountains with like just cave areas you could walk through, but I'm sure there's a lot you could find.
There's
You're
I think
digging.
I just stumbled. I think
You're
I just
digging.
stumbled.
You're digging. Okay. All right. I was trying to get to a point. So if we look at the screens, Pokemon. We were doing some Pokemon Nuzlocke yesterday, or not yesterday, Monday and Tuesday. So Pokemon does have caves as well.
That's true.
You could look at them for a reference. Bringing it full circle, chat.
Full circle.
So if we look at here, this is the thing I want to look at. So we just talked about why get component is bad in some situations. This depends on usage. But here, if we look at the data-driven menu screen component, which I established is essentially the root of how all of our screens, all of our screens are, or at least a good chunk of them, except for like 2 exceptions, are data menu screen components, or data. Words are hard. Data-driven menu screens, and most of our screens are of this type. In order to make this work, right, Unity has a little bit of a gotcha, where I'm using a lot of interfaces for a lot of these things. And Unity can't quite figure out how to use a interface as like a reference that you can like drag in. So when we look at this data menu screen, we actually have a menu object and a menu info component objects list. And then we have these 2 other variables here, which is the menu and the menu info components. These are actually what we're referencing. We want to have the menu and we want to have a list of the menu info components. But because these are interfaced, or this is a class that has interfaced objects, and this is a list of interfaces, we can't necessarily reference them directly. And so instead what we're having to do is on open, we're having to do a get component in parent for the type of data-driven menu we're looking for. And we're having to do a get component in parent for the types of data-driven screen components we're looking for. And honestly, we're going down a child and then coming up and finding the parent because we're trying to find an object that might be turned off. When we turn all our screens on, some of those objects are off, and Unity can't let you find a component if it's turned off by default, but you can get a component in a parent if it's turned off. Don't know why. So what we're doing is we're going down a child, then going back up to our parent that we know has the component we're looking for on it, with a parameter true to say we're okay checking for inactive objects. And then we get the first thing that we find, and then we add that. This is awful, and I hate it. But the problem is, because of the way that we've set up so much interfaces in our system, there isn't really a great way with all of these interfaces to be able to have a specific class that we want to reference. And okay, let's dig into an example. So if we go in here and we take a look at our equip screen, we have this menu object, right? This menu object we can drag into here. This one's okay. And that's because it is a class, right? It is a specific class. This is a list of interfaces. Unity won't show it. So I was midway through fixing this. Poison Lava redeemed a name generator.
Grunk.
Grunk.
Grunk the cave. Grunk the mushroom. Grunk the cookie. Grunk the hander of poison for Cusco.
What do you want us to name? So I had that name generator on specifically for naming. You know, honestly, I don't know what I had that on for.
It just existed.
It did exist. It was one of the ones that I auto turned on when I set up a bunch of channel rewards. Honestly, I think my intent when I turned that one on was when we get to like something like Minecraft, we could name heroes. But we could do it for Pokemon. So if you want, I will take your name Redemption And the next Pokemon in the Pokemon Nuzlocke we will name Grunt or Grunk. Grunk.
I like it.
Are
Definitely should be a ground
Is
Pokemon.
is that okay for your name retention, Poison Lava? Also over on YouTube, sold. Awesome. Marked as complete, and I will write that down. The next Pokemon that we catch will be Grunt.
I love that.
I don't know if I should have had it enabled during the dev stream, because there's not really a lot of stuff we're naming potentially.
Name the species of mushroom.
Also, hello to Burning One over on the YouTube side of things.
Hey, Burning One.
Hope you're
not too burning.
Hope you're having a good day.
Hope.
I need a pencil.
Oh, has a magical pencil? No, I'm so sorry. Trixie has no pencils. Only a tablet pen. A stilo? I'm not feeling the rocks right now. I'm just gonna pass up doing details on the rocks. I tried a cave. It literally just made a little holy triangle. I can go like this.
Okay. Whoa.
What?
The Burning One with a $50 donation over on the YouTube side.
Wow.
Appreciate
round of
it.
applause. Thank you. I'm doing the golf clap. Because I don't want to clap into the mic because that would hurt everybody's ears.
And the Burning One saying, "Yes, I'm having a fine day." Well, thank you for sharing that your great day with us.
Cookies, the Burning
Holy
One.
smokes, much appreciated. Very generous.
Okay. And on that note, we are going down.
You're gonna leave the cave?
Yeah, I'm not feeling inspired for cave. I do want to do some more homework. There is some references once I got it, but I'm not feeling the. I mean, here's a tree. How big is this cave to a tree? The dimensions.
How far
are
away
weird.
are the islands in the background?
The dimensions are getting weird. I'm not enjoying the visual here, so I'm gonna step back. I'm gonna recoup, and then I'm gonna go back to it. Maybe I'm just gonna make it a very narrow, toothy, like say leg teddy cave. Just found a really cool reference for that. I'm gonna throw in my my reference sheet,
Okay.
and I'm just gonna touch base with the cave cave later. And I'm gonna begin the Valley of the Dragons.
Okay.
Which means I need to go around and get everybody's little.
All the little
Frames.
tablets that
Yeah,
you've been
little
hiding
tablets.
throughout all the menus.
I think that's fun.
Yeah, no, it's super fun.
Hey, booty.
Okay. I'm gonna come back to.
I'm bringing it back down.
I'm gonna come back. Yeah, I'm gonna bring back down the energy as I talk more about code. Okay, so this is something I was halfway through implementing before, and the realization I made is that if I make something a class, Unity is able to set up and have that class be settable. And by doing that, I can get rid of some of the nonsense of the get component stuff. The problem is a lot of my data-driven screen components are interfaces, and we treat them as generic interfaces in a lot of different places. So I think so here's the problem is we have this extremely complicated like web of how our stuff is set up. And a lot of our pieces are data screen components. And if I want to make it so that this list is not an interface, but instead is a class, I'm not sure if I can simply just change this to a class. And I don't think I can. Okay,
I haven't done the Lost Nation yet.
Data-driven. Let's just try something. Okay. So what we're trying to do, just to make sure I'm being clear in my explanations, is we can make it so that we can drag the menu directly in, so we have a direct reference. You know, going back to the grocery store, The Burning One in YouTube says, I hope you're explaining this for someone else because I won't understand none of it. There are some people who have said that they are following it for specifically the explanations. Honestly, the game dev stuff, when we started this, I was doing very simple things, but I've moved on to doing more complicated stuff, but I still want to do the game dev. And I think there's a small subset of people who want to watch it, and I appreciate those who are hanging out, whether that's to try and complete the Minecraft stream challenge, or whether on the Twitch side of things, or whether that's specifically to just like, you know, support the channel. I appreciate that. But I think I'm just doing the game dev and streaming it, honestly, more so to keep myself focused most of the time. And talking it through and explaining it helps me figure out what I am trying to accomplish.
And I'm just here to make pretty pictures.
You are, which is helpful.
Yeah. Though I am taking a second away and I'm pulling up my references for the Earth Nation. No, Fire Nation. I don't have the Fire Nation symbol. 'Cause we got
Unlockable
Shadow,
characters hits the nail on
Earth.
the head with, I'm kind of assuming you are mostly rubber ducking us. And that is specifically a term in coding in which you have like a rubber duck on your desk in which you talk to that rubber duck about the problem that you're trying to solve, and oftentimes that helps you solve it. And it's a weird phenomenon of like explaining your problem to someone else often helps you better understand and solve that problem.
I have not heard of it as rubber ducking.
Yeah, no, rubber ducking is a classic programming term of like, and that's sometimes why sometimes programmers will pull each other into meetings just to explain a problem, and the other programmer might just sit there and not even say anything, but by the end of the conversation it's just like, oh, I figured it out. All right, thanks, bye. You know,
I love that.
Yeah. Poison Lava stepped away for a second. Just briefly, rubber ducking is a programming term in which you talk to a rubber duck and explain your problem, and in explaining it, you solve it. That's basically it. It's an old term, but essentially explaining the problem often helps you trigger the explanation. And that's basically what I'm doing here, as well as I hope that some people are enjoying and finding it interesting. I don't know, documenting game dev is also something that like I think is a fascinating thing to do.
When we get stuck in the future, which we will, we'll be able to go back and actually listen to ourselves talk about it and actively, hopefully, get it fixed up.
Okay, so the thing we're trying to solve here is that originally when I wrote these screens, the only way that I could get a reference to these objects was by doing this weird convoluted get strategy. So if we go back here and we look at iScreen, we had to do this like get child, get component in parent up and down structure to try and get the menu. But the fact that we're doing this is like the analogy I used earlier, where we kind of have to go into a grocery store and try and find Pop-Tarts, and it's 6 stories tall with 42 aisles on every floor and escalators hidden throughout the building. Like it's very difficult to do this get component call, and it's somewhat costly. It's not too bad because we only do it one time on open, but this code looks awful, and I would love to directly reference the objects in the scripts so that we just drag into it exactly what it is that we want. And so if we look here at like these guys, this is the old object, and I've half set it up before stream where I can drag in the menus. The tricky one is the components. And so for context, again, the components are like, the menu object is what we bring up, right? When we bring this up, we open all of these different pieces. When I go into the skill menu and I go up and down on this menu in here, right? This is the user select menu. It has this selection, right? And this selection is this menu going up and down. It has another component that it updates based on that. Actually, it has 2. It has the menu list and the skill count. And so these 2 components are updating based off of whatever the selection is in the menu. So if we go up and down, we are seeing this update. And if I go in and I actually change this to have some things equipped, we'll also notice that the equip count changes as we go between users. And so as we're going up and down on this menu, we want to have these components refresh with the data of the object that we have selected, essentially. But because these things are at their core,
Hey, Tohi.
sorry, what?
Quick question. Out of these two designs, a positive or a negative space, what do you think is best for Vidar, the Fire Nation?
I think I like the left one.
Last one?
Yeah.
Not too busy?
Yeah, and it feels like it would be embedded on something instead of carved out. So, and maybe that's the way you
Oh.
described it to me, that it's like the negative versus the positive. But,
Well,
yeah,
negative and positive versus like.
but I think that I prefer the left one
I
as
feel
the
like this
base.
is very quilted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the get component here is getting data-driven component. The problem is this is used as like a very base thing, as we described in our chart. By documenting all of this, this is used as the base for menu components. It's used as the base for poolable object screen components, and it's used the base honestly as itself. Some places actually use just data screen components. And so if we want to have there be a class that we can reference, I think that this needs to be, we can't use an interface. We have to have a class at some level if we want to be able to reference a list, right? That's the thing we're trying to solve, is we need this to be a class, not an interface, in order for us to be able to drag the components in as generics, basically. And so we need to insert a class after this. Honestly, I think it should be replaced, but let's start by trying to insert a class. So we're going to have this class data driven, and we're going to make this a class, and we're going to remove all of this, so lowercase c, and then we're going to have this inherit from here, and we're going to pass t in. So we've basically at this level inserted the data driven thing. This now has to implement all of these things. So now we have to implement all of these pieces inside of here. And we can leave them as, so we need to leave them as virtual because we're going to override these now. So this is virtual, this is virtual, this is virtual, this is virtual, this is virtual. And then we're going to just remove these pieces as well. Okay. Now, everywhere where we use this thing, which is 80 places, we have to try and replace with this class version, is kind of where we're at. So if we come into here, this thing is that. Can we do this? Does that complain? It does not. Okay. What about this one? That's fine. And this is kind of where we're at now. This is going to be, I'm going to switch over to Drixie, I think, as I kind of just run through and replace all 80 references, and I'll pop back in a second here when we're a little further along.
Oh, I'm just doing a thing over here. I think this should be orange. Yeah. You know what? Boxes are hard.
I will call out that there are ways to like auto replace everything in the whole project, but
Why have you chosen not to do that? Out of curiosity.
I want to go one step at a time and see what happens each time I make one change and see what kind of errors we run into as I make it slowly. rather than like do it all at once and see like a bunch of errors all simultaneously.
Oh, you don't want it screaming at you?
No, I'd prefer if it wasn't screaming at me the whole time. Or I guess I want it to scream at me slowly in a low volume, opposed to a constant loud scream at the very end. Or
A pitching whine.
Ah, okay.
Has it begun to scream?
We've hit the real problem. Okay.
Oh, there's more?
So this is why we can't just do this. So in Unity C#, you can only have one. You can only inherit from one class at a time. You can have as many inheritances of interfaces as you want, because an interface isn't inheriting the class logic. Again, all it's doing is saying this thing must have these functions implemented, essentially, or these variables implemented. Not variables, properties, it doesn't matter. The point is it must have this specific layout, such that when I reference it, I can just be like, hey, I want to call terminate or init, because I know that it's going to have that information. So an interface, you can have as many as you want. You can have a thing inherit from a bunch of different interfaces. You can only have one class, though. So as soon as I try and have this thing inherit from here, it complains, because we can't have multiple base classes. Now, the solution to that is we must make it so this class inherits from mono behavior. I don't know what impacts that's going to have, because again, this is being used by a couple different places. This now means that these things, because of this change, will now be inheriting from mono behavior as well. And I don't know what impact that's going to have, but I'm going to keep moving through and see if I can figure it out.
Where's that button? Yeah, because they got the red over there. That looks very regal. Okay.
What kind of distance are you looking at doing for your valley? Like, are these tablets going to be setting the size for how far away things are?
No, I was just trying to get like their template set because they're all different sizes. I'm gonna have to find that unification, and I have the rough placement to where I want them to be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I really want to prioritize any over the other, so I'm gonna have to be delicate with them. But there's gonna be one closer, one further, so we'll see how this all goes.
Okay. And so is this valley like super far away from the camera at this point, like perspective wise? Is it nearby? Is this like a cliff edge? What are we?
So I have a couple of ideas. My references are further away. Whoa, everything went orange. My references are further away, but I think because of the way we've done everything so far, which feels a little on the closer side, I need to... Would you say everything's on the closer side?
Yeah, it really depends on, like, I still think that building and that mountain have clashing perspectives.
Agreed.
I don't fully understand how far away that building is or how big that building is. And there isn't really anything that's, like, setting the scale, so...
Yeah, like, this mountain's supposed to be big. But this building... It doesn't feel big even next to the mountain. I don't really understand why it doesn't feel huge.
Well, I think that building feels huge to me.
Does it?
Yeah, it feels like it's like for giants, because it's on the horizon line, so it feels like it's super far away because it's right on the line of the horizon. And so because it's right on the line of the horizon, to me it feels massive, whereas if it was like closer, then it could feel small. I don't know, but that's just me.
We tried that and it seemed a little funny.
Yeah, I still don't know.
Oh, And that's excellent unlockable because that's what I was going for. Our Ice Nation are very modern and very techy in their robotic kind of ways.
Yeah,
Compliments accepted.
So essentially the world is set into like 4 nations. There's like a nation revolving around fire, a nation revolving around ice, a nation revolving around earth, and a nation revolving around kind of like shadow energy.
Yeah.
And those 4 elements will be impactful in the like combat system, in which there will be those 4 elements that will be used. But they're also narratively different. So the fire area is kind of has more of a medieval kind of age kind of feeling to it, whereas like I'm drawing a lot of inspiration with the Ice Nation. Like internally I feel like it's a lot like the Albed from Final Fantasy X, but also mixed with some other things as well. And it's just like kind of having that kind of scavenger. There's the world is ancient, there's lots of old tech, and the Ice Nation spends a lot of its time digging up a lot of that old tech in very icy terrain that they're able to survive because of the tech that they're finding under the ice. Whereas the Fire like kingdom, the Fire Kingdom is more based off of like Vidar is more based off of like almost like a liquid fire, like almost like a natural gas but in magic form. And like a lot of their technology is based off of like running that magic throughout their civilization to keep like the houses warm and to, you know, power any of the appliances that they might have. But their appliances will still feel older and more medieval than like something from like the Ice Nation.
Yeah, they're back a couple years per se. I'm just pulling up some references. I'm finding a couple, but I might, depending on the perspective, I might actually not be able to do the tablets as easily as I thought, because that was my first idea. So definitely going to take a step away from doing the art and really pin down the perspective reference that I need to crutch on.
Interesting. Okay.
You find something cool?
Yeah. Okay, so we've narrowed it down so that there's only 3 references left to iData screen component. The new class one that we set up, a reference inside of the menu screen, which I think might be okay to leave for now, because again, we can look at menu once we've resolved everything else. We're more concerned with getting the data menu right. And the menu screen is only used for like 2 very specific examples. And then like there's one spot here where Poolable Objects screen component is inheriting from these 2. And then it's complaining because we need to actually, I'm not entirely sure why it's complaining. It's not interface list. Oh, because we can't inherit an interface from we can't inherit a interface from a class. That makes sense. So this is a problem. So by doing this, we break this connection, and we can't have. So this is a problem. So this connection doesn't work if this is a class instead of an interface. And then the other problem is similar in that data menu component can't be inheriting from menu component and I class data component, because then it doesn't work. But maybe we don't care. No, we care. So this menu data driven component is what our menus are made of. And when we're going up and down here, we're updating a menu. So we need to be able to drag a menu, like the skill menu list, into this like component structure. So this thing does need to be updated to use that. So does that mean that we need to update menu component? Okay, so this is where we're running into some of the weirdness that we called out. So this thing inherits from this weird structure of things. And this thing's a class that does some logic. So my thinking then is if we want there to be a class at like the base level that all of these things operate under, then I think for this one anyways, on the menu side of things, if we want to be able to drag a menu into this list, there's a bunch of errors. If we want to drag a menu a menu into this list here, well, technically, I haven't updated it yet. Yeah, it hasn't taken because we have errors. But if I wanted to drag it in here, it's going to need things fixed. Okay, let's save this so that there's no errors, right? And then...
Ooh, that's fun.
Save that so there's no errors. So now we have a list of menu components. So these are of class data-driven screen components. So if we click on, say, skills, we should be able to drag that into there and it works. Now, if we click on this, though, we can't, because this skill menu doesn't have any components that inherit from this. So this is working for any of our more generic solutions. So like this guy being inherited from the class version instead of the interface version is working. Also, I will rename this at some point. We'll come up with a better name for what this thing is. But this is allowing us to drag objects in without having to do weird like lookups that are super expensive, right? It at its core, it's again going back to that grocery store analogy. Instead of it being like, hey, I have to go like search for this like Pop-Tarts in like a crazy large store that's impossible to find things in because it's so massive, it's essentially more like we're directly referencing it, and that way when the class loads up, it's more like it walking into a grocery store and going, I'd like Pop-Tarts, and then someone just walking up and going, here you go. It's way more effective.
Oh, I want that world.
And so that's why I'm trying to make this change. Now, in order to get our menus based off of the same base piece, because that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to say, hey, we want this to be based off the same starting piece. And we've changed it so that, let's just update this a little bit. So we've changed it so...
Okay.
We've changed it so that this thing instead goes to... our weirdly named class version. which honestly I should take the I out as well as a kind of another thing, because I at the front of the class indicates it's an interface, but it's fine, we'll fix it eventually. So these now go from in this structure.
Where did I miss a dot?
Or I guess more accurately, these two are still coming from the base version, but a bunch of our, like, you know, how do I put this? Most of our components that have no extra levels in between, most of them now come from the class variant. But we still need to fix these two, which are still coming from the base one.
I did my colors backwards.
And then once this is the base one, then, or once this is the base for all of them, then our screens can just reference whatever we want name this class eventually that's more clear. It's essentially like the global base of all of our components in the game. Everything that wants to be a screen component will be based off of this class. It also makes every single one of them a mono behavior, which is kind of weird, but it's different bridges to cross on different days. Let's start by getting it so that everything's direct references and we don't have to do these weird lookups. So, okay, so skill menu list is a skill menu which inherits from data-driven component, but data-driven component already inherits from menu component, and so it can't inherit from both menu component and the base class. This leads us to, well, you know, where is menu component used elsewhere? Elsewhere. It's essentially used for those two special cases, which is boot menu and main menu, which maybe just need to fall in line and stop being special cases and instead just be like, hey, you operate the same way, I'm sorry. We've got a hydrate redemption from unlockable characters.
All right.
Thank you for keeping me hydrated, because I would forget.
Actually, that's a really good point. I'm getting super warm.
Hydration complete, and
I like liquid.
And window opened. All right, hopefully that's less warm. Red Yoshi, welcome to the stream.
Welcome, welcome.
Poison Lava also saying what music is in the back of the stream. It is a piece that I've used for like 2 years, which I've had from a random like Unity pack that I purchased for like RPG music. I don't know, it's pretty like unnoticing and like kind of backgroundy, and so I feel like it's often very good at like just filling the air so it's not just pure silence. I don't know.
My favorite.
It's basically elevator music, in my opinion.
Literally my favorite. I like elevator music.
But yeah, I got it from a pack from the Unity Asset Store a while back. And we set it up originally as like to play in the background when we were walking around and doing some battle scenes. And it kind of just became what I put on when we're starting a game dev stream, so.
Perspective is so different, but I don't think changing screens, it matters.
Kind of matters, because the whole point is supposed to be that like
Cohesion.
you're panning a camera through different areas.
So like, I'm just gonna try a little experiment here. If I was to put this tree...
Let me switch you to be the main.
Oh no, I'm not ready to be the main. I'm scared.
You have been the main camera multiple
Mom.
times. Okay.
So he's doing it again. Okay. Tree? Question mark? Tree. Oh, I need tree in front. If I was a tree right here. I mean, okay. You can kind of get this vibe where you're standing in front. If the tree is going to be there, if I have something so forward facing, it still feels okay. but I'm just gonna block in a couple of templates.
Mm-hmm.
So like this is my distant valley.
Yeah, I don't love this one, to be perfectly honest with you.
That's fair. That's fair.
My like the original sketch you had was more in like what I was thinking for this, in that like when we originally first came up with this idea, the realization I had was that the graph kind of sits in the middle of the screen and the corners are often empty because of the way that like this graph ISO kind of diamond layout. And so it was like, oh, what if we just had like 4 pillars?
So it was very much like this.
Much lower.
Much lower, but how does that warp the perception? Because that's my concern right now, is it doesn't really play well.
Possibly, but that was the guiding piece, right? Is I very much wanted it to feel. I think what you're running into is that when I explained it, you saw the gully and your mind went valley, but I don't know if valley is actually what you can pull off with only having the left and right corner, and maybe a little bit below.
Like that, right?
Potentially. Because I was originally thinking like 4 floating pillars, essentially, was my first thought. Like, you know, 2 lower ones near the middle and 2 higher ones near the edges because of the spacing. Essentially, there's like a triangle arc on both sides.
Yeah.
But if you want to try and make it work with mountains and valleys, I believe in you.
No, of course.
You may be overcomplicating it.
Oh, definitely. So, like, I got... Like, the block-in I have here.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make this... The perception of this is very far.
Yep.
Is what I'm realizing, and we're really close up. So how can I blend what we want?
So the thing is, I feel like you can pan down to like you're in the sky for the first few, right? So these mountains could be very close to you, but when you pan down, you can have a perspective that's really far away because you've panned from something that was really close to you to now seeing a valley off in the distance, basically.
To be true, I don't even need to show the ground. I could just do these 2 areas with open area in between to give the illusion that we're still in the sky.
Yeah. Well, because your camera doesn't have to come all the way down to the ground. You could still be quite high and seeing stuff off in the distance, right?
Yeah.
If you think about the perspective that way, maybe that helps.
I love just smushing these things around like Play-Doh. Yes.
Bend to my will.
I don't like this one. This one just can just destroy half of it. Be a little... Oh, there's an icon behind there. Whoops. Trying to make even more smoosh. Okay. And we haven't done really any complete background art, but technically this all has been mid or foreground so far. So I'm not gonna start doing a background, right? No background. That's like a mid. No back. Yeah, okay. I will be right back.
Okay. Okay. I am trying to figure out if it's possible to make it so that menu components base class is I'm class data driven screen component, this thing, and it is fighting me. and it's fighting me because I'm not thinking about how this stuff is set up. Okay, so I can make it so that menu component is the base, but essentially what we've done now is we made it so every menu component is a data menu component, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. Okay. All right, let's take different. Okay, where is this used? We said this is used basically everywhere. Okay. So this needs to have a T1, T2. Okay, so that solves that. It's a little upset because it wants me to use the word override. And now an abstract class is overriding a base class, and yeah, it's gonna be mad about that. So now this is no longer abstract. So this is gonna be overriding, and this will be base.update. Did you bring back cookies?
No, I'm not that fast.
Much sad, Trixie.
I wish I was fast like that. I could bring back cake. Do you want cake?
We have cake?
I got my panettone.
Alright, bring cake.
Alright, I will bring cake.
Alright, so it's less complaining about that, but now it's going to complain about everywhere this is used because now there's two different versions. Unlockable character says, cake isn't a cookie. You have betrayed us.
Well, I betrayed Tohi. I will get cookies for the chat. Patience is key. Though.
Thanks for dropping in, Darker FE. Thanks for dropping off the points towards the Minecraft stream challenge.
Minecraft.
Tobias Random says the cookie is a lie.
But the cake is not. Portal was a good game. I very much enjoyed it. And it's a pear and chocolate cake. It's very unique. It's more like bread.
Alright, and we're back.
With cake.
The cake has been opened. There was much crunchy noises, but it has been unsealed from its container.
I also have a kombucha, and I'm very excited for the next hydrate.
That's gonna be a little bit, probably.
I know. I have it on standby.
At least 2 minutes. Yeah, Red Yoshi, we are super close to the goal. I mean, people have been hanging out today, donating points, dropping off things. It's been good. Let's switch back to the picture-in-picture mode. Not that one, this one. All right. So, we're fixing errors. We just look for the red things. Show me the red errors. There's no red errors. Why are there no? Oh, I haven't hit save. All right. Tell me what's broken. 5 problems. All right. Doesn't like that this doesn't have extra values now. So what are the 2 values? If we go back in, can we rename T? Rename T1. Yeah, okay. So T2 is the value that most of these things don't care about. So the boot flow doesn't care about its second value, so it should be able to pass a null. No, it's expecting a type. Let's just pass an ice cream component. I will find a better way to solve this at some point. For now, we'll just slam that in there because I'd like to see if I can just get it working as like a base. And then same thing needs to be done here. We're just going to give it a random type. And here, this just needs a random type as well. Okay. Now, with all of those changes, are we done with errors? Yeah, there's a bunch of other errors which we can deal with in a bit.
No overlapping of the tiles in the background, right?
I mean, you can have some overlapping. I would just prefer we keep it to a minimum because we're going to want to try and make it clear.
Okay. Yeah, I do. I thought I'd check.
Okay.
Oh no.
I'm going to mute for a second while cake is eaten. Okay. Alright, and we're back. Cake has been eaten, and hydration has been redeemed.
Thank you, humans.
For reminding me to do basic human things.
Sometimes it's hard. I do really enjoy that style. Try a blocking of that so it's a stone valley. I'm gonna go more cool colors just because I can.
Okay, so I don't know if it was clear, but like while I was muted, we did manage to get it so skill menu could be dragged into here. So now skill menu is based off of data-driven menu component, which is based off of menu component, which menu component is now based off of a class data-driven component screen, which is now allowing us to have a base. So go back here and we update our thing. This thing is now connected to this thing, right? And so most of our components now fall under this base class, and so this base class can be used inside of our data menu screens as like a, hey, we can have a list of as many things of these as we want, and they can be used as like, hey, we want to update these things. And that'll update most of our basic screen components as well as any of our data-driven ones. Now the problem is these guys. These guys are still based off of the data-driven one. So we got to figure out how we deal with that. I feel... Let's look at where this is used. So this is currently used here, which is unnecessary because this is now based off of the same line. So we don't need this. Honestly, this whole class can go away now because it essentially overrides and overwrites the same thing this is overriding and so there's like, in order to do this, we've made the sacrifice that there is no longer a just menu component. Now all menu components are data menu components, which is not ideal. I want to figure out if we can figure out how to fix that, but that's a different problem. Then we have the base one, we have the class it's inheriting from. We have the menu screen, which again falls into the weird, there's like a weird area here which I'm not sure how to solve, but I'll think about more. And then we have this poolable object. So where is this used? This is used by a lot of systems where we inherit from this thing. So based off that logic, that means any component that inherits from a data-driven parent component will not be able to be dragged in. So what was our test example was we had skill, unit select, and we had these two. Okay, and the equip count, this is specifically a menu that inherits from the data piece. Okay, but if we find an example of something where if we go in a level maybe, oh, it's broken. Okay, we gotta restart. We should also probably check to make sure things are still operating. It is not. That might be because I hit Y too quickly. Again, there's a weird bug where it's not updating super quick. No, there's still a problem with main menu. Okay, so some of the work we've done has broke things fundamentally. And this is because we're trying to cast a poolable object as a class data. This is just, we have to solve this. There's a bunch of reasons why this has to be fixed. So then, where is this used? This is used all over the place. And this is used by these guys. Right, so this is a problem. Can we make this a class instead of an interface? Would that solve it? So I class data-driven screen component. Now it has to implement these things. And things get complicated. At some level, it doesn't even make sense to have a class. Because we're basic, or it doesn't make sense to have interfaces because we're essentially just writing classes as the base for all of these things anyways.
What do you think? Stony Valley or tree? Or like...
What is this complaining about?
I'm gonna make this green actually. I'm gonna emphasize on that.
Okay, we're gonna just leave it alone for now. And so then, by making that, yep.
Green Valley with the high arches, or menacing stony valley with just lots of spikes and kind of more flat and far out versus high up and narrow.
I like the stony one a lot more.
Yeah, a lot more, eh? Okay, I'll do first pass with that.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Do we want the ground involved? We kind of have to. So it'll look more like that when it's all grounded in.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Can we try, instead of that being green, that being mist?
Well,
So essentially you'd be able to cut out all of the green and just have mist around the edges.
like physically not having anything here?
Yeah. But then around the edges make like cloud cover, essentially, that seems to cover the... This is a more complicated ask, but essentially what it becomes is like peaks, jagged peaks among the clouds without actually getting to see the ground.
I see. So I should be getting rid of all of these edgeways that represent like the touchdown on the ground.
Yeah. And then you can get just like clouds kind of built in, and then we don't have to have as much like interfering with the skill tree. You don't have to have as much behind it, because now it's just like these cliffs with clouds around them.
Misty Valley.
It also adds a little bit more of mysteriousness to it, which I think is kind of what you're going for anyways.
I'm going for a little mysterious, a little dangerous, a little menacing. You know, the standard pot of like, let's go on an adventure, guys. I'm sure it's worth it. We won't die. You know, standard affair. might be able to rock and roll that. Might take me a few attempts. I haven't even done a pixel cloud yet. Let's go for it.
Unfortunate.
What happened?
Things are just complicated, that's all.
Continuous?
I was able to get rid of all the errors so that
right.
we have the Poolable Objects screen component now inheriting from this class data screen component, hopefully making so that this is the base that all of our components are basically built off of. But it's complaining about a couple things along the way. And I'm not entirely sure exactly how to fix that. Like, I have some ideas, but I think at its core, it's that I'm not... I've done some pretty hacky kind of like slapping together of some of this stuff. But if we hit play now and try and walk through it, it breaks. And so we have to try and figure out why it's breaking. And it looks like it's specifically breaking because there's a null reference, i.e. something's not set properly here on the main menu screen. So we can start breakpointing through, but I think I know what the problem is that I just have to go through and spend a bunch of time cleaning up a lot of the code now that I've rearranged the entire architecture. Because before, what were simply interfaces are now class references, which makes things more complex.
You didn't need it more complex, though. Wait.
Yeah, I mean, the hope is to simplify.
Yeah.
And I think the eventual goal is to try and get rid of the menu-based components a little bit more, and maybe just collapse all of the menu-specific stuff into like a data-driven menu component class that's like the base for a lot of this stuff. And then essentially our menus and our components and our data-driven menu components all come from the same base class, and there's just screen component, which then immediately goes into a class which is like data components, which at that point we don't even really need screen component anymore. Who references screen component?
Everybody.
Who watches the watcher? Screen component, screen component, screen component. So screen component is being referenced, honestly, in a few more spots than I originally thought it would be. Part of that is me like throwing some stuff together, but interesting. The combat system has a bit of a... Oh, you know why? This can be refactored away. This, I think, should be refactored in some way as well. Same thing here with the refresh. We went over this previously in the stream. Boot menu, elemental display. This, by its very nature, is already inheriting from screen component because menu component comes from that, which comes from that. So this is a redundancy. This doesn't even need to be here. Oh, wait, no, this is where I misread that. No, this is where I'm doing some weird stuff. Status bar manager. Why are you a screen component? just cause. Alright.
Feels like it?
Because it feels like it. It doesn't probably have to be, honestly, because it's only ever direct referenced by its class name, so it doesn't need to be a screen component. So yeah, at its core, I feel like what we're getting down to is that I wanted to have this very broad system where we can have interfaces that were used for everything, and all of the different interfaces are kind of, you know, all based off of this screen component. We could have a bunch of different varieties of screen components. But Unity just doesn't really allow us to use interfaces in a way that's like super, like, it's not super compatible with Unity is maybe a better way to put it. Because if we want to be able to drag references in, they need to be classes, not interfaces. And when we get down to a base level where all of our base level stuff are interfaces, it just, you can't drag things in, and now you have to start doing a lot of get by components in order to track things down. And I don't really see much of a benefit for them to be interfaces at this time, opposed to classes.
Does that look like fog?
Yeah, I think that works fairly well for now. I think it could be touched up. I'm sure there are...
Totally rough pass.
Yeah, but as a rough pass, I do feel like that's a winding kind of fog that's bending around the rocks and stuff. Very good.
Yeah, I'll definitely play and find some more, I do love me some clouds, so I'll have lots of fun looking at cloud photos and how they wrap around solid objects, because they're really cool. They are giant sockwood marshmallows that cry. Yeah, I'm gonna have fun with this.
Okay.
That I'm on the right track?
Yeah, I think that's definitely along the right track. It's definitely adding visual interest to a screen while not like overpowering it. Like
yeah,
I still
the
feel
subtle
like
colors as well.
I feel like the menu is still pretty close to being like the center. It's like definitely a draw, but the background is interesting. But you can tone it out if you're trying to focus on like what skill do I have unlocked and which one am I trying to buy next.
Another question is these guys. Excuse me. Oh, you weren't on tablet layer. Whoops. That tends to happen.
I'm gonna leave it on you for a few minutes while I try and debug this problem and figure out what's going on with the break.
Not the break.
Yeah, there's some sort of break here that's just completely stalled everything. And I think at some level, I think I just need to remove iScreen component. I don't think it's serving any purpose anymore. The data-driven one has been pulled out. The menu screen component one feels superfluous. Like, I built all of these interfaces, but I think they could just be a base class that everything's running off of. And I think we'll be okay. It just means we have to do a lot more, like, virtual functions with overriding. It's just a lot more tedium that I think is what's causing the break right now, but hopefully I can find a way to resolve it. But at the very end of the day, this like 3-hour stream we've been in, I've definitely like consolidated my ideas into like, here's what our menu looks like. And just having that like visual diagram of like, here's how all the classes are connected is huge. And then like really coming at the main problem, which is how do we like simplify all of our structures down to like one base class, not one base interface, but one base class, so that we could reference the things directly through the Unity interface instead of having to find it at runtime. Like nailing all of that down and even getting this kind of working-esque prototype where, yeah, I can drag it in. The whole game's broken when I try and run it, but the very minimum, the goal of I can drag the objects into the script is working. And so it's just really, where's the sacrifice line? Do we like just torch and burn all of the infrastructure that I've built and like give up on any flexibility in the future for the sake of having it so that I can use the Unity UI? And I think the answer is yes. It's just going to be way more performant, and honestly it'll probably be a lot more simple in the short term. Long term, it may give us more difficulties, but in the short term, it'll probably be an easier thing to work with. Which is probably the right call. It's a real hard debate to have, though. Why do we have 10 viewers?
What do you mean, why?
I don't feel like game dev usually is like the most interesting. I assume it's mostly people trying to get channel points towards the Minecraft stream, but I appreciate people hanging out.
Because we're cool.
Oh, because we're cool? Okay, cool. That's...
Yeah.
I also think the drawings you're working on today are really interesting, too.
I think that one should be smaller. I mean, background art is always a lot of fun, I feel. It's very intriguing. And because I'm just designing it from base point, like, it can go anywhere, right?
Unlockable Character says it's because of cookies.
Cookies. I know what my chat wants.
Poisoned Lava is asking what the Minecraft stream is, by the way. So, essentially, Minecraft is what I built the YouTube channel on. It's what we did 10 years ago, and we haven't really played Minecraft in like probably 8 years. I feel like one of the later ones were probably in like 2012 or something. I'd have to go back and look. But I haven't played Minecraft in a super long time. And playing 1.18.1 really made me feel like there's a lot of interesting things there that I could explore. And part of the reason I stopped playing Minecraft is that it felt like it had run out of things for me to do. I had explored a lot of it in the beta alpha period, and I haven't really gone back and really explored some of the features. And there's so many like structures, and like the game has an end. When I played last, there wasn't a way to beat the game. There wasn't like a end dragon, and so like there's a lot of stuff to go back and explore. And a lot of the chat here is generally fans of that early content, people who have been around for 7, 8, 10 years, who have been around since those early Minecraft days. And so as part of the being off for the holiday break this past week, I thought I would do a bunch of streaming, and I've set up a bunch of the channel point rewards stuff that people have been using for Hydrate.
I mean, lots of icons now.
And we have a bunch of more icons because people have been kind of crazy with, gifting subs. So we got a bunch more emote slots. But the big thing was I set up a Minecraft community challenge to see could we hit 50k channel points donated towards a Minecraft stream. And so, like, that's what we've been working towards the last week while I've been streaming some pretty long hours over the past, little bit here. And so we're getting close. We're at 92% towards that. So if you click on the channel points and then click on the Minecraft stream, it's just the goal is to get to that number, and then we will do a Minecraft stream. And potentially a series. Like I'd like to try and beat the game. I think that would be at the bare minimum something I'd like to do. But there's also a lot of exploring and stuff. So we'll try and go and see where we get to with it, and if we end up running out of energy on it and we're like, I'm not enjoying it, then we'll probably move on to something else. But at least for several streams, I would like to work towards beating the game at the very least. So but the community has definitely come together, and I feel like there's a lot of people just popping in, dropping off points, hanging out and building them up.
Yeah, it's been amazing little sense of community lately.
I really appreciate it, and I hope I don't disappoint on the Minecraft stream. That is my only fear, is that it has been 10 years. I've definitely changed as a content creator, and the people who have stuck around, I imagine, are fine with those changes. But I'm interested to see whether or not I can still Minecraft stream it up like I used to. But I don't know.
Improve, Tohi.
I'm gonna walk around and I'm gonna mine things. It's gonna be great.
I collect rocks.
I've also been enjoying the Pokemon Nuzlocke too. I'm excited to get back to that at some point. We've been working our way through that. We got to the 3rd gym yesterday, and we're
only a couple casualties.
Just grinding up a little bit. No, well, it's fine. We don't talk about it. We don't find.
It's fine. Guys, it's fine. Everything is fine. Oh no.
Okay, so where do I even go? What am I even doing?
What are you even doing? That looks good. Wow! Too much, too much. No, that's...
I feel like they could be smaller.
What are you talking about? The tablets?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna play with those in a bit. That looks better. I like my rocks.
Are they good rocks?
These are good rocks. Not good caves. Screw caves. She does not like caves anymore. Rocks are good though. Rocks and clouds. I'm okay with these.
They may exist.
They may exist.
I shall allow it.
I will give them permissions. Trying to keep the illusion of height with the shadowing. Which I think I accomplished. Do a little bit of a... A bit of a that there. Yeah. Don't like that.
Oh, shoot. Okay, I think that might have fixed it. I'll get double check and then I'll bring my screen back up and see if it's working.
Yeah, what? You don't have... Oh, I'm on screen.
You've been on screen the whole time.
Oh, no. I wasn't ready. Mom!
It's 30 minutes or so. I don't know.
Mom! He's doing it again.
I told you I was putting you on. I just never took you off.
I didn't expect to be on this entire time.
Well, I wasn't really talking about anything. What did you expect was going on?
I don't know.
That's fair.
Other things, obviously.
Alright, so... Stored data is still not being set, so some sort of problem is happening. Oh, do I have to call override on all of these?
There's too much there. I love my rocks.
Yeah, you do some pretty good rocks. It's definitely one of your your skills that you've developed quite well.
I just like rocks. People got their thing. I did cookies and rocks.
Rock cookies?
No, those will hurt your teeth.
That's fair. All right.
That one looks too much like a snowman.
Is that the line?
Yeah. Okay, I can get behind all that.
Still broken. Ooh, broken in a different way though. That's pretty cool.
How is that cool?
That means progress. Breaking things and it having different errors means something I did is working better.
Or you just made it twice as bad.
We tend not to think that way around here. Skills. Awesome. Okay, data's coming in correctly now.
Is that the same as over there? No.
Okay, so the rest of the problems are this. Okay. Pop back over to me and explain myself. Alright, so most of the problems we're running into really are something that I thought was going to be an issue. It's just presented itself more quickly than I thought.
Whoa, 95% complete Amorphous Gamer Champion.
Morphous in Twitch chat evening told me I have to go to sleep, which is fair. But I'm here to say and hope your day's going well. Say to hi and hope your day's going well. And I also contribute to the Minecraft stream goal. Appreciate it. Thanks for dropping in. We are now 1,500 channel points away from it. We can get those 1,500 channel points before I end the stream today. Then probably gonna try and do some Minecraft tomorrow.
Can I reward chat with a cookie emote?
Do you? Sure.
It's your call.
If you weren't aware, the
I told them I would give them cookies.
yeah, the earlier today chat wanted cookies, so apparently we have to do a cookie emote.
I know what chat wants.
I can swap it in the it'll take a couple days to get approved, but yeah, we can make them a cookie emote after.
Yeah, let's see if we get Minecraft today, they get a cookie.
Oh, is that okay?
That's the challenge.
All right. I think we'll hit it today. What we just got Charizards. Thank you. Charizard donating another 580, or at least 580 total. We're now only 1,300 away. Challenges and challenges. But yeah, cookie
Keep it
emote.
interesting up in here. I already have the blueprint for the cookies over here, after all. Like, well, bam, we'll get cookies.
Oh, interesting.
What's up?
I just noticed that Amorphous doesn't have the new channel badge. But that's because Amorphous is a founder, which is a different type of badge.
Oh, we gotta get Amorphous something special.
Well, I don't think I can. I think that is just based off of the fact that Amorphous has been around for 38 months. Interesting.
Super special.
That interesting that overrides the other channel badges. Neat.
Fun facts.
Very cool. Very special.
Do we have the new? No, we don't have those. Oh my god, I'm so excited for all the new icons.
Yeah, there's a bunch. Yeah, not all the emotes are in for sure. There's a bunch that we've made that are still in the wings.
Pun.
But yeah, thanks for dropping in. Have a good night. Have a good night. All right. Where was I at? Right. So we're in the middle of setting up all of these things to be virtual, but because it's no longer interfaces, but it's a class, we have to go through and add override everywhere, basically, is the problem. Because all of the things that we've written, although will compile, is complaining because it's hiding a base thing or whatever, and that's where a lot of our errors are coming from now. So we just have to go through and add basically override everywhere. I don't think we need stored data, though. In fact, we don't need these ones. That's kind of the one nice thing about having a class as the base type instead of a interface, is that we kind of can remove all of the extra empty functions, which will help make some of these things look a little bit cleaner. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. But yeah, and basically I have to go through all of these classes, and every single one of them we have to come in.
Wizard, monk.
Nope, not those
No?
kind of classes. Different
well,
kind of classes.
I'm on the wrong game.
I just come in here and hit override and remove the extra functions that don't need to be there. And here's hoping that that's enough to get this up and running. And if it is, then I don't know, I think we're pretty close. I was hoping to get into the animation side of things today, but this has ended up taking pretty much the whole stream. It's fine. I'll relabel it on the YouTube archive. I don't know what to, but like refactoring or
Problem solving and mountains.
understanding. Yeah, no, we could probably do problem solving in mountains. That's probably a pretty reasonable representation of what we're doing. Oh, the overrides. This is why I wasn't doing this, though. This is why I was putting it off, but everything's broken, and I think this is the last reason why. And then there's some general cleanup to be done as well, in which I think that we can kind of go through and potentially remove all of our interfaces at this point, because they're not really doing anything because of this change that we've made. I'll switch back to you while I do the menial labor.
Is it menial labor or is it effective labor?
It's a lot of copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. Well, not even copy and paste, just paste.
Just the pasting.
Just the pasting.
Hold the copy.
Correct. You are correct.
As much as you don't want me to be, I am correct.
As usual.
Whoa. Too real. Too real.
Too many reels.
No.
We gotta do a cookie emote if we hit the thing. Yeah, we're real close.
Okay, so this is this. What if I do this one
exciting.
like that? Oh, I like that better.
I'm excited for Minecraft tomorrow.
Oh, way to jinx it.
Well, you're right. You're right. Now no one will donate points ever again.
Nope, they're gonna start taking points away.
The points. I retract my points.
I will confiscate points for your hubris. Coldfish just ruined my train of thought there. That's amazing.
All right.
You did the announcement, Toby.
That tomorrow we'll do. I'll do a Minecraft stream. I'm not sure. Well, let me go check. I'm gonna go check the schedule. I'll be back.
We have to organize and plan now. Thank you, everybody. You guys are wonderful. And hopefully we have a good spot where he can really deep dive into Minecraft here. Solid chunk of time. You guys earned it. Well done.
All right.
What does it look like?
It looks like it'll be morning, so probably start around 10 or 11. We'll do a Minecraft stream until probably 2, so like 4 hours. 4 hours. Yeah, I'll aim. Let's aim for 10. Let's aim for 10. So I'll post that in Discord as well. But we're gonna aim for a Minecraft stream tomorrow, for 4-ish hours, starting at 10 o'clock. And we're gonna probably start by just kind of exploring the edge of our biome or our space, because we converted that beta world up. I'd like to check the borders and see how that looks. And then, I don't know, we'll go from there. I don't know how, like, linear the story or progression will be, but... And in general, fantastic. Just amazing work from all. Thanks a lot of you for, hanging out, joining for a lot of the streams, and just committing towards, getting that goal. It's been pretty awesome.
The power of friendship.
I thought it was super fun. I was on the edge at first about whether or not it would be annoying or not, and I wasn't even sure if I set the value right, but I did a little bit of math. Turns out I'm pretty good with numbers, and I was like, I should be doable with the amount of folks we have tuning in regularly, and we hit it. So, and hit it about on time for where I thought, because I thought Friday would probably be it, and if not, Saturday or Sunday would have been fine. But yeah, so we'll do Minecraft tomorrow, and then probably we'll do some more Pokemon Nuzlocke on Saturday. Honestly, Saturday might have enough time to do maybe some Pokemon in the morning, and well, I don't know what time Saturday, but do first half of the day. Do first half of the stream as like Pokemon, and then maybe the second half as Minecraft or something, but we'll figure it out.
Oh, no.
But definitely Minecraft tomorrow from 10 till 2.
Do I have different colors on different side of my mountains? How'd that happen? What color do you prefer, the bluish hint or the more muted purple hint? I'm thinking muted purple over here.
I'm gonna go with your opinion.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. There we go.
That's a very subtle difference.
Very subtle, yes, but it totally changes the climate of the atmosphere. And also it's important because I'm trying to find the second tone for my shadowing on the back mountain, which is being a wee bit difficult.
Difficult?
Yes.
Impossible.
Never. I want that. That's a tone darker than that, so I need to go across. No, that's not gonna work at all. If I go up here. Oh, have I been messing up this whole time? Oh, is this even my correct palette? Oh no. It defaulted on me. Wait, what? Where's my... This is my palette. Save palette. Okay. Let's see if I have everything. I don't know what I was doing then. That's the sky, which is a color I want.
Alright, let's finish up this overriding. I think probably getting close to calling it. Here soon. We've been going for a couple hours. I feel like oh man, I have so many more things to fix. Okay, well, I'm gonna fix all the overriding, and then I'm gonna see if I can get the game working again. And if the game's working again, I think that's probably a good place to call it. I also imagine your valley is getting to a good point where it's probably okay to stop.
Yeah, I'm just color playing now. It's always the hard part. I love these two color combinations. I think they work out really, really well. So I just need to figure out my last rock, because I can't be this color. It has to be lighter.
Mm-hmm.
By one step. Two steps, because I want the dark to be lighter than their lightest. So dark to that. That to that. Maybe I do need to change that. So that one to there. This one's...
We did pass the goal.
You guys are the best.
All the hypes. I think that it's
Do not like
it's
that.
pretty awesome. If you missed the announcement because you had passed out Red Yoshi, we're gonna do Minecraft stream tomorrow from 10 to 2 p.m. Gonna start there at least anyways and see where we go from there, but I'm gonna probably spend the first bit of that stream just exploring the boundary of the world, and then I do want to kind of branch out a little bit and try and just, you know, I don't know where I want to go in terms of like whether or not I want to just start by exploring so I definitely want to start by exploring the world, but I don't know whether or not I want to take a bunch of stuff with me, or if I want to just go empty-handed and like start a new base elsewhere and then like return once we've kind of gotten ourselves situated with more stuff. Like I don't really want to start Minecraft with like everything unlocked, or not everything, but a good chunk. Kind of feel like wandering off into the wilderness, and then once we've kind of proven ourselves capable of hitting trees and making crafting benches, return to the old castle, potentially via like a nether portal network or something. It's kind of my thinking, but we'll see. We'll see. Also, because I'm streaming it and not recording it, if folks are in chat, they can help dictate the direction we go on things, which I think is going to be an interesting direction for a Minecraft video. Compared to the old content where it was more me just doing stuff in the void and then responding to you guys' comments afterwards. Red Yoshi says, you know how your old base headed east, I want to see you go in that direction. When you say, so I'm trying to think of it in frames of the fort, the base fort, in which there was basically there was a wheat garden out one side. There was a direction that headed out to a little mining section. There was obviously the minecart leading out to the secondary base in the mountain, and then there was another direction that just went nowhere. Which one were you referring to? Because east, I don't know offhand. I could probably figure it out in-game based off the sun, but not sure offhand which direction. Oh, are we done? Okay, save all. Let's run Unity. Oh, I removed too many brackets. Ah, there was a sign labeled East Unknown. Okay, cool. Got it. Heard.
Heard, bird.
Okay. I'm gonna switch back to me for just a bit.
Oh, I was just getting used to the attention.
You're still picture in the corner. We can definitely start there, Red Yoshi, because I definitely want to start by heading off in a direction to find the border of the world, because when we brought it forward, everything's going to be a bit, like, weird at the edges of our old chunks when we get to the new chunks, and I kind of want to just find that border. And I don't think we actually explored that much in that world. We actually kept ourselves pretty contained. We went and explored a lot more when we installed mods and got Steve Dave's the horse and rode off, but
What's your horse's name?
Steve Dave's.
I love it.
But before we rode off, the save I have is before that, before we got the horse mod. Because at the time, horses weren't in beta, and so it was a mod for that. So our border should be relatively small. This should be a very small number of chunks, I would imagine. So it should be fairly easy to map the edge. Ooh, also the word map. We should make a map and, like, figure out the space of our world. The map should also be able to kind of show us where the borders are a little bit, because I think it is based off of the world terrain. Oh, I wonder how maps work in old chunks. There's so many questions. There's so much to explore and figure out. Okay, so we're running, we're debugging, we're gonna hit pause and hit play. It's possible, Red Yoshi, that there's some world blending. My understanding is that going from a beta world all the way forward might make is a little harsher, because they didn't do a lot of world blending going from beta to alpha. So that specifically during that transition, there's a little bit more of a harder border. Nowadays, yes, there is a lot more blending, but older saves less so.
What do you mean by blending?
So when the old world had different world generation, and the new world has, like, kind of different things as well, and so, like, in the old generation it might just been a flat plain, right? Or maybe a mountain or something, but when you hit the edge of the new area, it like in old world transitions, it would just go from being a flat edge to, like, ocean. So it would just be, like, pure flat and then ocean. In the newer ones, they blend it, so instead of it being flat, where there's an old world to new world, they do a little bit of something to make it so that it will, like, blend between and be a little bit more smooth in the world generation. So it'll be like, oh, it'll dip down into, like, the blocks will slowly trend down towards the water, so it's harder to notice those hard walls.
Righto.
Okay, so here it's complaining at some point. There, why? Why does that break? Was unit null? What was the problem? I didn't see it. Okay, we know it breaks on that for loop, so we just don't go much further and we try and figure out why. Alright. Open it up. Hit enter. Oh, unit is null. Where is unit coming from? Unit is coming from stored data. Stored data is null. So the menu component.
Okay. What do everybody think? Need some rocks.
I can switch back.
I hope everybody likes it.
I think it looks pretty amazing. But how long did that take you? Like half an hour?
Once I got the color, like the colors, just took me 10 minutes by itself. But once I started rolling after the concept thing, yeah, half an hour.
Crazy.
It's all the prep work in art. It takes forever. rock and color there.
Okay,
I
so
also did change the background color to not have the same color as the rock, so that's something we're going to have to play with in game, because I think all of the game has the base color being this.
yes.
But that's something I had to choose for my rocks. So, thoughts on that? I could change the rockets again, but
I mean, we could have the camera transition between the colors, or like we could have a blend between the colors.
or you know, this is an entire sky biome. We literally could just be all sky colors over here. As soon as you transition over, it could be sky.
Yeah, you have a pure blend, so you can have a different color on the other side of the mountain.
Mm-hmm. Like if
I think right now they're all transparent images, but this will require us to have to actually put color in.
Oops.
And that would be the next stage for you, is trying to stitch this all together into like one image, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that looks fine.
Yep. Okay, as for my problem, I'm not entirely sure what's happening. It looks like basically the unit that it's expecting is null.
Oh.
And it looks like something in the data system is broken, which I mean is what we were messing with. Well, there's a couple things broken in here too, so there's other issues. So yeah, this is saying skilled info is, yeah. We update the screens, then we update with a selection. The selection is null, so we get the first selection, which is the menu button. Then we call on select on it, which invokes a callback, which causes us to hit our on press button, and we get into select, but the data on the button is null. So we've instantiated a button, but that button isn't set up correctly. And this is inside of the skill screen unit button, which is going to be skill screen. If we go to the screen, it might be easier. Here, this one, and this one here. So inside of this call, it's not setting up the units correctly. Let's see if we can figure out what's happening there. And click. We have two data points. We have two groups, right? All right. So we're going to set up a button. We're going to pass in guard as the data. We're going to allocate that unit with that data, and it should set that data. So we're going to allocate with the data, and then we're going to initialize, which is going to do a bunch of fancy stuff where it's like setting the object to on and doing a bunch of things. Yeah, we're too deep in the weeds right now. Let's come back out. Here, populate data. Okay, so then here we're going to do update data, which is empty. Okay. So what is it that we're expecting this to be? We're expecting this to be a Skill screen unit button. So we come back over to here. Actually, we have to hit stop so that we can access things. Skill screen unit button. If we go to asset management, addressables, groups, search for that. Doesn't show up. Okay, so then it's based off of not addressables, but based off of our pooling system, which UI pools. Yep, that's the right one. So that's this object, which I think we were supposed to hit here. Oh, and this one's not set up. Okay, I missed this one. Ah, I missed this one because I didn't look for things that were poolable objects. I was only looking at the other ones. So I need to add override in here. Okay, that's why this didn't work, but most of it did. Don't need this one. This can be override. This can be override. 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 And override. And then we need to look for everything using this as a class type. Oh, there's a bunch more I missed. All right. A couple more minutes of this.
Have fun? Question mark?
You know, I'm close.
You're close to having fun?
Yes, I'm close to having fun. The real fun moment here is when this is all done, because like, if this works, then I just need to clean up the code, which is like basically just getting rid of all the extraness, all of the redundant systems that are in around this, which will take a little bit. Oh, that was another one. This can go, this can go. And then we'll be in a good spot, I think. I think I need to kind of just drop the interface stuff, which I do enjoy, but I think this will just work better in the long run. And then once this is all complete, I can re-hook up all my menus. Then I need to change some things to be prefabs, and then finally I can rearrange the transitions. Because all of the panning right now, we're moving all the objects, like I said at the start of the stream, and I really want to make it so instead we're changing moving the camera. Okay, that looks like it did it. Let's show that real quick. I think it's getting too cold. Close the window.
To the window.
Now, if we hit skills here and we hit enter and we ignore the breakpoint, it loads into the next screen. Now, does it load into the one after that? It does. If I load into the next one after that, that works. I can go back, I can go back, I can go back. I can go in. I can use a potion. Okay. Still need to fix some of that UI too. I haven't fixed up the item screen, it looks like. Here we break. Okay. Because a menu is failing. Interesting. Interesting. Oh, because this is another special case menu. Okay. Okay. So there's kind of a general pass that needs to be done there. So, where are we at? So I think we've been streaming for 3.5 hours. I feel like I've definitely got my head on straight for a lot of this stuff. I think we've now fixed everything so that there's kind of a base class. I need to give it a better name. And I do think I want to try and figure out a way to kind of eliminate some of these structures because they feel a little extra and not necessary. I also think I think in general I want to try and remove this, remove this, remove this, and remove this stuff. And then potentially there's some sort of link between these menu lists and this guy. And that'll really simplify everything down to there's just like a base class, which is like a screen thing. And then anything can just be like, hey, I take a screen thing. I guess technically it would just be, this would be the base class, and there'd be like a couple varieties that use it. I think that's all I think that's the simplification I want to do, and that makes my screen system a lot simpler. Then I can go through and fix up all of the references so that everything's direct referenced. That'll be better. And then I'm gonna prefab some of this stuff, and then I'm gonna change around the screens. Cool. I have a direction. It's been a little bit because this has felt like an overwhelming task that I just haven't been able to get my head wrapped around. But doing this on stream has allowed me to like really concentrate in on like what is it that I'm trying to fix and what is it that I'm trying to solve and how do I go about doing that. And everything's still in a half broken state, but that's a good place to be in some places, or in some ways, because at least I'm midway through something. So if I take a break and I come back, I'll know where to go. So this stream was super useful for me for getting my head on straight, and I think it gave you an opportunity to really focus on...
Man, look at my stairs.
Okay, let's take a look at your stairs.
My stairs are the coolest stairs that you ever did see. I'm gonna rough them up a little bit, but like, I am
So then, are you thinking you'll just put some clouds in along the middle, or...
Oh, let me put my clouds back.
Ooh, neat.
So I don't know about putting it in the middle because there's the cut boxes, right?
Yep. No, I meant the middle bottom, right? But you did it. You got it there. Okay.
Yeah, so this is what it is so far. I'm going to tidy up the tablets a little bit and figure out how they are inserted in the ground, whether I'm going to have some gravel, leave it. I think they're going to be well kept here, so I kind of want to fix the ground tribes one, because I do believe this nation takes care of this kind of magic, so everything's going to be in very good condition, very respected. So yeah, a little bit of polishing just to carry the story, or literally I can put all of them up here and make this like a viewpoint with all the element tablets.
I think that you could try some different avenues there,
I could try a couple of avenues,
but I think at the very least what you have here is more than passable for, like, we can get this in and I can get the camera motions, and we'll have all the screens with their proper background UI, and that'll be a huge bump in terms of like
winning.
Well, in terms of like polish and how well things look. It'll make things look a lot more complete.
Yeah, no, I'm quite happy with this.
Yeah, I've got to do a bunch of work on my side to make it so that we can transition between all of these, but I think I have a path that I'm pretty happy with. So, all right, cool. I think this is where we're going to call it for today. Thanks for everyone for hanging out.
Thank you.
Thanks to people working on the Minecraft stream goal. Special call out to Burning One for, big donations. Really appreciate that. And in general, I hope everyone has a great evening, and I will see you tomorrow for a Minecraft stream around 10 p.m. PST.
10 a.m. you mean, right? Not p.m.?
10 a.m. Yeah.
Okay.
10. Sorry, you're right.
10 a.m.
10 a.m. PST.
I'll be there in spirit.
Oh, I wrote that down wrong. 10 a.m. Right. Okay. 10 a.m. tomorrow. I autocomplete to 10. I autocomplete to p.m. But it'll be a morning.
Midnight run now, aren't you?
No, it'll be a morning stream. Yeah. But for now, though, this will be Tolhi signing out. Later, folks.